Welcome to our Washington City Council meeting. Today is Wednesday, March 26, 2025. We are in the council chambers at City Hall. Our meetings are streamed live and archived at washingtoncity.org/meetings. We welcome and thank Sharon Shores from the Universal Life Church Ministries and the Interfaith Council, who will be starting off our meeting tonight. Sharon.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, and for those that don't know about the St. George Interfaith Council, we are about 25 members, which includes a wide diversity of denominations. So some of them are Quaker, Greek Orthodox, Jewish, Baha'i, Methodist, Episcopalian, LDS, and even more, Lutheran. You name almost any denomination you can possibly think of is a member of our St. George Interfaith Council. The other thing that we do is we sponsor Crop Walk every year, and that's in November, and that's for feeding the hungry. We also sponsor a yearly Harmony concert, which was held last weekend, and we actually filled Cousy Hall, overfilling it, really. We had people standing just listening to the concert. And then we also do prayer over the city every year on New Year's Day. We do that in St. George, right? So let us pray. Oh, Heavenly Father, we come before you with gratitude for all you have given us, for our health, for our families, for our communities. We thank you for being a God of love who is with us at every moment, at every time, in every circumstance. You never leave us or forsake us. Your grace brought us safe thus far, and your grace will always lead us home. We thank you for making each of us in this room, every person we meet, every citizen of this city, and in every city in your own image, with dignity and infinite worth. We thank you for the calling you have given every one of us to be good stewards of your creation, to create cities that are safe havens for all. We ask for wisdom, discernment, and guidance for all the leaders set before us in this community as they make decisions that are uplifting and positively supportive for the community as a whole. We all come to this room tonight as complex human beings, carrying burdens, carrying joys and hopes, trusting that you alone is the bond that holds us together in your love and peace. I thank you tonight for these servants, our mayor, our city managers, our city staff, city council members. I give thanks for the way of service that they have chosen to take up on behalf of all of us here. It is with great gratitude that I give thanks for our world, our country, our community, and I pray in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for your words and a beautiful prayer. And thank you for all of the efforts that you make. The Crop Walk is a wonderful, wonderful event. I've asked Councilman Troy Bellison to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand and repeat after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Council, I will make note that we do have need to go to closed session for one item that would be pending or potential litigation. That said, I will call for a motion to approve the agenda as outlined.
So made.
I have a motion by Councilman Ivey, a second by Councilman Belliston. All in favor?
Aye.
The agenda is approved unanimously. If you'll look on our screens here, you'll notice that we have redesigned our logo for America's 250th birthday. So we'll keep that logo up there. We haven't forgotten about the Red Rock burnt orange logo as the backdrop to the Cotton Ball, but this is for America's 250th birthday. So we also have challenged other municipalities and companies to take a patriotic approach to their logos as a celebration over the next year or so. With the agenda approved, we'll move on to announcements. And the first item under announcements is mayoral proclamation. Steve, if you'll cue that up for us. Washington City Proclamation. Whereas Mia Love was born in 1975 of Haitian immigrants who came to the United States for a better life. And whereas Mia's parents instilled in her a grateful attitude, a strong work ethic, a love of God, and a desire to lift and enrich those around her. And whereas Mia served her community on the Saratoga Springs, Utah City Council, and later as Saratoga Springs, Utah Mayor. And whereas in 2014, Mia succeeded in her trailblazing efforts and became the first African American female Republican elected to the United States Congress. And whereas Mia served 2 terms in Congress as a strong voice for self-reliance, fiscal discipline, federalism, the reduction of burdensome federal regulations, and morality. And whereas Mia reached millions of Americans as a national commentator with a positive message of hope, faith, love, perseverance, and reason. And whereas Mia and her life are the embodiment of the American dream, demonstrating that a child of immigrants can climb from poverty to the halls of Congress, impacting millions of people with her actions. And whereas her living wish and fervent prayer for this nation is that the America she had known is the America we fight to preserve, and that each citizen and every leader will do their part to ensure that the America we know will be the America our grandchildren and great-grandchildren will inherit. Now, therefore, I, Cress Staley, Mayor of Washington City, Utah, declare March 26th, 2025 as Mia Love Remembrance Day in Washington City. I urge all residents to follow Mia's example, working hard, defying odds, and striving for excellence in all they do. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the seal of the city of Washington, Utah, this 26th day of March, 2025. If you're not aware, Mayor Congresswoman Love passed away this past weekend after a valiant fight with brain cancer at the young age of 49. She has always been someone that I admire, that I look up to, and I just I want to make sure that that her message and her life and her example are remembered and means something in this community. So before we move on, I would just like to just have a brief moment of silence in her memory. Thank you. Moving on to announcements, the Arts Council Spring Social will be on Saturday, April 5th at 6 p.m. at the newly renovated Heritage Hall. Any other announcements, Council, that I may have missed? Next item on the agenda is declarations of abstentions and conflicts. Anything to declare this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 4, which is the consent agenda. This is approval of minutes, consideration to approve the minutes from the City Council meeting of 3/12/25. I'll call for a motion to approve those minutes. I have a motion by Councilwoman Casperson.
Second.
Second by Councilman Coates. All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes of 3/12/25 are approved unanimously. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is public hearing. There are 2 items this evening for which we'll hold public hearings. I will make note that we did have the option for electronic public comment, and we did not receive any comment on either of items 5A or 5B. Item 5A, this is a public hearing and consideration to approve a resolution amending the Washington City Sewer user rate. I'll invite Public Works Assistant Director Lester Dalton to present to the council on this item. Mr. Dalton.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council. I know this is a very riveting subject for all of you. We have gone over this pretty extensively in previous workshop session. The same presentation is available if we need to go through that again tonight. Like I said previously in workshop, the biggest change that we're proposing here is a uniform rate rather than a split rate that addresses lift station fees. We're proposing just to have a uniform rate across the board. There is an increase proposed. It equates to about $1.07 per user. And if the council's got any questions, or if you'd like to go through the presentation again, I've got Aaron Anderson with Mullen Collins here. We'll be happy to go through that and answer any questions the council, the mayor, or the public may have associated with this.
Council, we covered this pretty extensively 2 weeks ago during the workshop session. Do any of you feel a need to go through the presentation again, or are you comfortable?
I'm comfortable. I just have a few comments.
Okay. Any questions for Lester or for Aaron?
Lester, I just want to appreciate you and your team and Aaron and his team it was a good report. Went through it pretty thoroughly. I think this is adequate, and I think it makes sense. We haven't updated this in quite a few years. And it's a very small increase compared to what I anticipated. So I appreciate the work.
Well said, Councilman. Thanks, Lester. You're off the hook. This is a public hearing. At this time, I'll open the public hearing and invite anyone who would like to speak to the amendment of the Washington City user rate to come forward and state your name for the record. Seeing no one come forth, I will close the public hearing and turn to the council for further discussion and or motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion. We approve the resolution amending the Washington City Sewer user rate. Do I need to state the rate? Just as outlined in our packet.
Second. I have a motion for approval by Councilman Coates and a second by Councilman Belliston. We'll go roll call vote, starting with Councilmember Belliston. Henderson.
Aye.
Coates. Ivy. Casperson. That is approved unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. The next item is 5B. This is a public hearing and consideration to approve an ordinance amending City Code Title III, Chapter 2, short-term rentals. As I invite our city recorder, Tara Pence, forward, I'll make note that we also discussed this item extensively 2 weeks ago during our workshop session. Tara took some good feedback from the council, and as I've looked through the packet, has made those minor amendments and is here to present and answer any questions the council may have. Tara.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. After our discussion last week or 2 weeks ago, I did make the adjustment that local property management and point of contact must have a business license as well. I think that's going to help keep everything managed more properly. Other than that, everything is as I presented it 2 weeks ago. So unless you have any additional questions for me or the public needs to know anything.
My only comment would be I still think the fine's not enough. I think we need to go to $1,000 just to make sure that it doesn't happen with all the problems we keep having. So we give them plenty of grace period.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my opinion. But
And Tara, is it $750 as I recall?
$750 is what we have right now,
As
but
proposed.
I can change that in the ordinance, no problem.
Council, your feedback on Councilman Coates' recommendation? Further feedback on
We
that?
talked about this before, but do you remember, you said you looked at other cities?
Mm-hmm.
Do you recall what those numbers were?
They're all over the place. People are charged anywhere from, most of them are about $450. There's some that are $1,000 a day. I think the goal, like I said before, the goal is to have everyone comply with our ordinance so we never have to actually charge or collect the fee.
Yeah.
But it does need to be enough that they actually, if it's a small amount, they aren't gonna care. So if we have the amount high enough that it is something that they see that they have to comply with, I think it'll make it better. So whatever
Tara, would you review the process once we find out there's a violation? Kind of go through the process, just to give me an idea of what.
Certainly, so we'll make contact directly with the owner of the unit as well as the property management company. Let them know what they're in violation of. We'll give them 30 days to correct the violation. Upon the 30 days, we'll issue a citation and we'll let them know this is the date you have to correct it. We'll check it. If they're not in compliance, then we will start the civil violation, which we can issue from our office. And it'll be whatever the council determines the amount to be, and will be a per day fine until it's brought into compliance. And if they have more than 3 violations in a 1 year, or at any point in time, if they have more than 3 violations, we can suspend their license. It would come back to you for a revocation, but if it gets revoked, it could be revoked for up to a year before they can apply again.
How do we know that they received our letters or message? We don't certify the mail, do we? How do we know that they got the notice and it's sent to the right place?
We usually will send an email, send a letter, and then we'll also confirm with a phone call. But we can certainly do a certified letter. We don't always know who's getting that either, so. But everything that we do when we contact our owners is through email, and they always respond. So we will make sure that they've received it, and whether it has to be phone or email, we'll confirm that they've
I
gotten
think
that.
that no matter what the fine is, I think that is something that we have to verify before we go to that next step. Sometimes they're sublet and it's just having that first contact, I think would be very important before we move anything beyond that.
So Terry, just a couple of quick questions. Violation, right? And they got 30 days to remedy the violation. Let's say okay, fine, they get a violation, they go remedy it. All right, you're back in compliance. 60 days later, they violate again. There's no charge, right? That's a second violation, right, that you're tracking, correct?
Yes.
And then they correct it, 60 days later, they do it again, bang, they're losing their business license, but they've never been charged at that point. They just kind of played the game, right? And that would be per property. What about for a property management company where, let's say somebody's got 30 properties, they're knowingly violating ordinance. But they're not doing it 3 times on 30 properties. They're doing it 3 times, distributed, right?
So that's why I feel like it's important to license those property management companies, because if we revoke their license, they can no longer manage properties in Washington City. So if you have a property management company that has 20, 30 properties in Washington City, and we revoke their business license, we're contacting every one of those owners and saying, this person cannot be your property management company because they do not have an active business license in Washington City. And all of those units they're managing, they no longer manage them. So I think that gives them more incentive to be in compliance with our code, because that's all of their business that they're losing out on.
Hypothetically, somebody does get their license pulled. When can they reapply for a business license? Let's say they want to come back next year. They've lost their business license. We allow them to come back next year and play the game again?
No, I feel like at some point we have to say, you've got your 30-day notice. You don't get a 30-day notice every time you're violating the same thing, right? So to me, we give them a 30-day violation. You've got your 30-day warning. If I go back in there in 60 days and you're advertising again for over the limit, or you're doing something else to violate that's the same thing, the fine applies at that point.
Councilman
Well, I
Henderson.
know, but after, pardon me, just real quick, after you've pulled their license, is there a grace period before we say, okay, you can resubmit for a new business license and
So
down the
in
road?
order for us to revoke, they have to come to council. So that's something you guys can stipulate. You can say you can't come back for a year. Yeah, it's a 1 year. In our code, it's 1 year.
1 year suspension minimum.
1 year suspension minimum.
Good question.
Yes.
Is it 3, it's kind of like 3 strikes you're out. Is it 3 strikes you're out per property or 3 strikes you're out per brokerage? And that's what you were asking, right?
So there's 2 different things here. So it would be 3 strikes you're out per property for the owner. But the same would be it would be the same for the property management company. They have to, we're changing our whole, if this is approved, our whole license is going to change, and they actually have to sign an acknowledgement as part of their business license that they acknowledge specific things as part of property management for short-term rentals. So they're all gonna know what it is in order to get their business license. And I think right now that's the dilemma we're having, because when we contact them, they are doing what their owners are telling them to do rather than what their code tells us to do. So they have to comply with that. I don't think that they need to have 3 strikes per property. I think that
Okay.
they should
Yeah, that's
have
what I was at. So
3
you're-
strikes.
So, okay, that's what my question was. Thank you.
Just for somebody else.
No, go ahead.
Oh, just for the public's perspective, we got copies of an email where one of these management companies has sent an email out to their people that said, hey, we have to change your listing, but as soon as we get the business license renewed, then we're gonna change our listing back. That's knowingly in violation of a fire code. And so there's just been a lot of problems with a few of the companies that are skirting the limits.
Thank you, Tara.
Thank you.
Mayor, if you'll remain just a minute, Mayor, if I can.
Okay.
On the
Legal.
question of fines, the fine amount is set to be the maximum that our code allows be fined for an infraction. So we're trying to not elevate this to a misdemeanor, because with misdemeanor charges, there's in theory a threat of a risk of jail time and the right to have the appointment of a defense attorney. And so the $750 is the maximum infraction fine for an individual. If it's a corporation or any sort of entity, the maximum fine is $1,000. And so what we're hoping is that this would be a code that could be enforced by civil employees. Someone like the city recorder could send out a letter and issue a citation for an infraction.
Back my request, because that makes sense. I didn't know there was a.
If you're okay with us keeping it there? If not, we would need to change this code and up the fine amount.
And my goal was just to curb the problem, right? Like, I mean, I just want to make sure we're abiding by the ordinances so we don't have these unsafe places in our.
And I think the reality, and Tara might be able to correct, most of the violators will be entities. And so most of the violators will be at that 1,000, but if it were for some reason just an individual, it would be a $750 max fine.
Don't want to get us, I mean, people make mistakes. I don't want that to get to the next level over something like that with the individual who's trying to rent their house.
Thank you, Thad. Good clarification. Councilman Ivy?
So this last legislative session, there was a bill passed by Representative Walter, I think it was HB 256, that allows the cities now to use an official listing website as long as we have a complaint that we brought about by our own means. So if we have a complaint from neighbors that there was cars parked up and down the street and they were blocking traffic, then we could then use this website to track and follow the overnight rental. So with that, it's important that we understand that Representative Walters didn't run the bill to try to catch or to make money. He did that to try to help us be in compliance with the safety mechanisms of overnight rentals, which we talk about sprinkling. If a unit has 11 people, then the building needs to have a sprinkling system. Things like that, that helps to be in compliance and keep it safe for visitors and travelers. One other caveat to this bill that I mentioned, Mayor, is that it also allows those overnight rentals to pay TRT tax, which helps, hopefully we'd be able to use that money for first responders so that we have visitors from outside of our area that will help pay for medical services and search and rescue and things like that. So I just want to point out, this has been something that the city has dealt with from its onset years and years ago with overnight rentals, when we really didn't know about it, and then we saw some things arise, and the legislature come out strongly and said, no, we can't use the website for that, but now they understand that. I think this is just a way forward for us, Mayor, if I may say, just that we can ensure safety. It's not a means that we want to make money or fines. We want our visitors, our homeowners to comply with rules and regulations so people are safe and well taken care of while they visit Washington City.
Well said. Thanks for the presentation. Good discussion, council. This is a public hearing. I'll invite anyone in attendance who would like to come forward and speak on item 5B in regards to the amendment to City Code Title III, Chapter 2, short-term rentals, to come forward at this time. The public hearing is open. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and turn to the council for further discussion and/or motion.
Mayor, I'm ready to make a motion if the council's ready.
Go ahead, Councilman Ivy.
Mayor, make a motion to approve an ordinance amending City Code Title III, Chapter 2, short-term rentals.
I just have a quick question for Thad. You said something a second ago. Entities, it's 1,000, individuals, it's 750.
Correct, for an infraction.
And so if it was, we would have to change it to say if it's 750 for an individual or 1,000 for an entity, if that were to be some, that, we would have to make that in the motion, right?
Correct. Right now, the code is written 750. The change that you're considering tonight is 750 across the board. If you wanted to say 750 for individuals and 1,000 for corporations, that would mirror precisely how our.
So what we have now is a motion on the table to approve as presented with the 750 for individuals and corporations.
So then my request would be to Councilman Ivy if he would want to make that adjustment to his motion.
What was that incorporation to $1,000?
That an entity would be 1,000, basically a business that's managing these would be 1,000, but if it was an individual, it'd be 750.
Which makes sense, right? Because it's their business to track and follow.
And I will just say, in general, in the state's penalty and sentencing laws and other cities, it is an accepted practice in this state that entities receive higher fines than individuals.
Mayor, I'm going to amend my motion to add that for incorporated entities, that would be a $1,000 fine.
Okay, you've heard the amended motion by Councilman Ivy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Belliston. This is an ordinance, so we'll go roll call, starting with Councilmember Henderson.
Aye.
Coates.
Aye.
Ivy. Casperson.
Aye.
Belliston. That ordinance amendment is approved unanimously with the minor amendment to the fine applicable to corporations. Moving along on the agenda, we'll move to item 6, which is ordinances. 6A, this is consideration to approve an ordinance amending City Code Title 9-12D, agritourism/business overlay, otherwise known as ATB zone. And before I turn this to Community Development Director Drew Ellerman to report to council, I will just make a motion that this is for the code amendment. Anyone interested in this zoning would still need to apply for the overlay zone once or if this change has been approved. And I will also make note that the public hearing on this particular item took place during our Planning Commission meeting last week. We did have no public comment opposing, and it was, well, as Drew was going to say, unanimously recommended by the City Council. Mr. Ellerman.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. I'm just going to read along with it because we'll point out the changes, leave everything else kind of alone. A little background, an amendment request from Stady Farms has been submitted to the city. Applicants wishing to have the Washington City Code amended for the purpose of eliminating and/or adding to portions of the current Title IX, Chapter 12D, Agritourism Business Overlay Zone. City Code allows for anyone to apply for amendments to the city codes. So please find the following proposed changes as shown. Get through these quick, even though there's a lot of pages. So I'm going to go on side to side on this. So the first change comes in Section 912D4, use regulations. There will be 2 of them. We're going to hit item number 6 on the use description. They wanted to add wedding venue, carriage house/wedding venue in one of the use descriptions. Also over here, number 26 on the use descriptions, recreational activities/family activities. Those are adding, proposed to add 2. The next change would come in, they want to eliminate.
Side of that, for the wedding venue, we're changing it. So it's permissible now in an Ag 10, but not permissible in an Ag 5. Table.
Yeah, in the table, when you're talking the carriage house/wedding venue would only be permitted in 20-acre A20 or more.
Currently, but this is showing to propose for.
That's on the second half. We'll get to that in a minute. I'm just saying what the original application was. Yeah, you've scrolled a little bit too far. Especially if you see it in the blue, that's the Planning Commission's recommendations. I just want to show you where we came from, what they ended up with. So the next major change would be section B in that development agreement. They want to strike the whole paragraph on development agreement. Moving along, that would be, we're going into the site development regulations. Letter B, written text. Again, you can see where they just want to scratch the wording, including percentages of land devoted to agricultural uses and those that will be used for tourism, business use and activities. They want that taken out of the written text portion. Then following right behind that would be the allowable area. They want to scratch the whole paragraph of allowable area. Heading on to D, these words are being added in red. So they want to add the words development and any proposed development for that particular item on the criteria to be judged on. Same down in number 4, they want to add at the end, just instead of ending with across from the development and proposed development. Moving into letter F, production. They're requesting that the words in there, and I'll just read that particular sentence, in the event that the agricultural productivity ceases or becomes improperly maintained, they want to scratch or falls below the minimum percentage of use as determined by this title. Now, that kind of goes back to that allowable area. They're saying if we scratch the allowable area, then you would scratch this because that's what that sentence is based on. And then moving over, the last part of the code itself is that it talks about that the city, when they make the determination on this, these are the things that are part of that approval process. And they just wanted to update the language basically. So the first one would be that the proposed development is consistent with the goals and policies of the general plan. And number 2, the proposed development will not be detrimental to the public interest, health, safety, convenience, aesthetics, and welfare of the city. And then number 3, the proposed development is physically suitable for the type and intensity of the land use proposed. So those are the proposed changes that came in to amend in the code. I'll just let you know, staff reviewed the request, and as I explained to the Planning Commission at the time of the public hearing, that staff has 2 major concerns with the proposed changes to the agritourism business overlay zone. The concerns center around the proposed removal of the 2 sections labeled the development agreement and the allowable area, which act as the backbone of this particular ordinance. With their removal, the ordinance lacks structure and is left somewhat meaningless. Now, in the time, I appreciate our city council, not council.
Legal counsel.
Our legal counsel, sorry, thank you, Mayor. Talked about the development agreement. I was okay with this. He said with a good written text portion that's still in, that could actually, they would almost be somewhat the same thing. So I felt a little bit better with that as long as we're going to make sure that the written text has some structure to it and stuff, and I can do that. But again, I still go to the allowable area on this, and that's just for the council and staff's part of that. And that was explained to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission at their public hearing then, the recommendation was made by the Planning Commission and passed by a vote of 5-0, recommended the following proposal to the City Council as it relates to the proposed amendments. So that's the ones that we come through, and the Planning Commission just wanted to, they were fine with leaving the wedding venue, but they wanted to be able to go down to the Ag 10 proposed lots or zone lots that would not, instead of being not permitted, would be a permitted use in there. Also moving over to that number 26, they were fine with adding family activities, but they wanted to put the word agricultural in front of that as the proposal. They left the development agreement being struck. They are also okay with the written text, that sentence being gone, but in the allowable area, I didn't quite understand this, but this is what it came up to, is they were basically scratched the whole thing as requested by the applicant, but they brought back the sentence that the existing acreage shall be maintained in a manner that is consistent with the farm's main agriculturally productive use or uses and historic condition. A number on it, they just said of the allowable area, just in other words, if I had 10 cows, 7 goats, and you know, that would always stay there, but then they wouldn't calculate any percentage. It would just be whatever fits and is permitted over in the boxes, is kind of what that means, so.
Stop you right there for just a second.
Councilman.
I want to make sure that I understand this. So the way it is right now, I see that it's stricken on C. The sum of all combined aggregate business uses may, is a total area of 30%. That means if there's 30 acres there, then that would be 9 acres that they could utilize for this and 21 that they could not, if this were to stay the way it is?
They could propose uses that are in the table, and they have to write where they're happening and what they are, so that they would just put that, I'm gonna pull one of them out and say, I'm gonna have a petting zoo, but it's only gonna take 1.3 acres. And they said, I'm gonna pick any of the others, and that one's gonna use up 4.7. So they would add all the acreage up of the things they chose in the matrix box, and it could come to the sum of the 9 point whatever acres of that 30%.
And it's interesting, Drew, because this original ordinance was drafted years ago when
14 years ago almost.
when Thad, then Councilman Signaler, and I were on the council together. So we were on the front end of this, and really an agritourism or an agribusiness ordinance was quite cutting edge. Now it's a hot topic at the Capitol where they're wanting every municipality to have an ordinance, and we were working on that years ago, and of course amending it today. Thad, would you just chime in on Councilman Ivy's question and engage with Councilman Ivy for a little more clarification?
I'm also going to simplify your math. Let's just say there's 100 acres, because I can do 30% of 100 better than I can 30% of 30.
Well, you know, Councilman Ivy was a fourth grade or fifth grade teacher.
I
Geologist,
can do 4th grade math.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. So this would be a pretty good arm wrestle here.
geologists work with numbers a lot more than attorneys do. And so if it was a 100-acre farm, letter C says that 30% of those acres could be dedicated to any use from the use list that Drew just mentioned. But 70 of those acres would need to remain in agricultural production. At the time it was passed 13 years ago, the concept was that it would allow business and tourism activities, but also it would require that agricultural uses be preserved. And so the proposal is to change that, largely because most of the agricultural land in our city, just there's not enough of it left to have that type of a percentage relationship. And so I think it's for the council's purview tonight to decide where you want that number to
And
be.
that leads right back into what my comment was going to be, is that, you know, the one farm that I can think of in the Fields has been a mainstay in trying to keep the farming culture alive and well for our entire county. And it seems to me like that, as long as it stays within what you quoted, as long as it stays in a manner consistent with farm, agricultural uses and historical condition. See, I would just hate to have this limit, because I know that in the fall, that's a happening place with corn maze and different things going on. And it just seems to me it might be a little bit cumbersome to apply that when I think we can, and I'm probably voicing way too much of my opinion at this point, but I just am a little bit concerned that I wouldn't want it to be detrimental to the uses that have already been established and thrived there.
If I can elaborate, my perspective, you know, that they want to get rid of the percentage, which I agree. I don't want to have to go out there with a calculator to try to figure out percentage. And when they're doing events out there, they're parking cars everywhere they can, and you're pretty much using 100% of the site at that point for an event. So I just didn't want to get with it. But the planning commission, with the blue verbiage that says the existing acreage shall be maintained in a manner that's to mean agriculturally productive use in historic condition. That was the planning commission kind of wrestling with the idea that we don't want this to become a pseudo backdoor into a commercial zone without it being a commercial zone. We want it to be, I don't know that language needs to be in there, or, you know, if it needs to be tweaked, that's kind of the council to look at. But as long as they maintain an agricultural focus, then I'm fine with it. If it was for somebody to come in and say, well, now we're going to do it because we're this agribusiness, now we're going to go do a, you know, hotel, then, you know, they would need to come back for a commercial zone.
I totally agree with what you're saying, because there are safeguards in that if there was any of these on this 30 list, like a restaurant or a hotel, like you said, they still have to come back and go through the process. So it doesn't grant any rights at this point, but it puts on the list so it's at least available. Because who knows what it's going to be in 10 or 15 years. Maybe they need to do something different to make it pencil in 5 or 10 years from now.
So the document in paragraph C is showing the blue sentence, the second sentence. That is the exact same sentence that exists in the code today. And so the Planning Commission reasoned through it and just thought, you know what, if we take the first sentence out with the percentage and the last sentence out that's kind of talking about measurements and just keep the second one, they felt like that sentence preserved the spirit while removing the calculator work.
I think that's a really nice summation of where the Planning Commission landed on that. Council, this is Councilman Ivan, to your question, this is the exact time that we should be discussing this. Any further comment on that particular section 9-12-5, paragraph C, allowable area? Or are we kind of settled there with the Planning Commission's recommendation?
Mayor, can I just ask a quick question?
Of course.
On use description before we get past it. On number 22, it says nursery. Now, I don't know if we're going to have children there or if we're going to be raising plants.
I would think because it's an agricultural-driven ordinance, I would say it's a,
Well, I've seen a lot of children enjoying the farm over the years, so I had to ask.
you guys wanted to add human and/or agricultural, but I love the question, though. I have to
The
appreciate
children
that.
are at item 24, which is the petting zoo. That's where
That's
they're
right.
probably going to be.
Sorry, man.
I'm pretty sure I planted my first seed at nursery, Councilman. I may
In
just,
a Dixie cup.
was it a bean? I may just also comment, so the development agreement, paragraph B that's removed, you'll look there on letter D. This ordinance originally had a really nice list of 8 requirements as part of the site development plan. This was an actual development of a neighborhood. I would still think we need a development agreement, but since it's just to apply a zone to it, I think that letter D accomplishes everything that a development agreement would do. And so I feel confident that we've got text there to make sure we get all the metrics we need from an applicant.
Council discussion on that particular section of the proposed amendment?
Mayor, I like the idea of getting rid of those numbers. I think the way it says there in the blue, I think I agree with the Planning Commission. It kind of keeps the spirit of what we're trying to do here, but gives a lot of flexibility. These farms could be around for a long, long time, and they're going to change over time. One year they might have some petting zoos. Another year they might, grow pumpkins, or it just gives some flexibility to what they're doing, and I like that. So.
Yeah. Good comments, thank you. Any further comments on this? Drew, anything else on your presentation? Excellent
Yeah,
job.
I'm just about
A lot of
wrapping
work.
up.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but I just realized if you
Don't be
look at,
sorry. This is what
if
you
you look
get
at
paid to
D,
do is write and amend code and then interpret it. So go ahead.
I don't know where this came out of because it's not in any of the other things, but if you look on here, we started at 9 and it's not supposed to be, that's supposed to be 1 through 8 instead of 9 through 16. I have no idea how, I don't know if AI jumped in here and was just messing with me. But I'll change. I just want to point that out because it is on the exhibit. That should be site development plan 1 through 8, not 9 through 16.
Okay, so
Wondering, well, where's 1
that's
through
just
8?
a clerical edit.
Just a
that
clerical
you'll
edit.
take care of if approved.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the planning commission also said they're fine with his word changes, development and proposed development, and striking out this, because again, on the production, if you do take away the allowable area, the sentence doesn't mean anything. But the word they did not agree with, this is what was proposed by their attorney, was to put reasonable specifications. We had a 2-minute discussion. Cities aren't known to try to be unreasonable. Well, people claim that we are, but generally that's what we base everything on, is reasonable specifications. Again, the planning commission was fine with changing out the word project or subject site with the development, and proposed development on there, Mayor, and that's the end of their proposal for the city council. So.
Well, I like the way you approached this. It was very straightforward with the original ordinance. the initial changes that were worked through, and then Planning Commission changes. Council, any additional feedback on this before I call for a vote? Any further discussion on this item?
Motion if you're ready.
Go ahead, Councilwoman Casperson.
Like the planning commission did a thorough job, and I agree with what has been said. We don't want to, make limits to like how they run the agri business, and so I feel like it was a reasonable and a good ordinance. And so I'll make a motion to approve an ordinance amending City Code Title 9-12D Agri-Tourism Business Overlay Zone.
Second, Mayor.
I have a motion by Councilwoman Casperson. I have a second by Councilman Ivy. This is a motion to approve the amendment to this ordinance, incorporating the recommendations of the Planning Commission. This is an ordinance, so we'll go with a roll call vote, starting with Councilmember Coates.
Aye.
Ivy.
Aye.
Casperson.
Aye.
Belliston. Henderson.
Aye.
The ordinance change is approved unanimously, 5-0. Next item on the agenda is a resolution. 7A, this is consideration to approve a resolution for an interlocal agreement. And this might be my favorite one of the night, Paul, while you're walking forward. A resolution for an interlocal agreement between Washington County and Washington City for funding for the George Washington Plaza and Historic Canal Trail. Assistant Leisure Services Director Paul Walker, tell us about it.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. This is referring to 2 destination development grants that were awarded by the county for those 2 projects, $500,000 for the next phase of the Historic Canal Trail and $150,000 towards the first phase of the George Washington Plaza project. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Questions for Mr. Walker?
Oh, Paul, you're doing a great job. Keep it up. I'm glad we're starting to get some of these funds to help
Yeah,
our city
thanks.
out.
Yeah.
We appreciate the support for us to go after these kind of funds.
We have a really positive working relationship with the county, and it means a lot that they would allocate those funds appropriately to these kind of community assets that we're bringing forward. So thank you for your work. Any other questions for Paul, or if not, I'll call for a motion to approve this interlocal agreement between Washington County and Washington City for funding for the George Washington Plaza and Historic Canal Trail.
So made.
Have a motion to approve by Councilman Belliston. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Mayor.
Second by Councilman Ivy. We'll go roll call, starting with Councilmember Ivy. Casperson.
Aye.
Belliston. Henderson. Coates.
Aye.
That is approved unanimously. Yes, we will accept the $650,000 for our projects. Item 7B, this is consideration to approve a resolution for request for qualifications for the planning and design of the Washington City Downtown District. Economic Development Director Rusty Hughes will present to the council on this item. Good evening, Rusty. It's nice to see you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I will be very brief with this. This is, well, Mayor, you already went over the consideration, so I'll just jump right into the slide show. I want to set some context. First of all, first, before I start, I want to just say thank you to the Downtown Planning Committee that's been hard at work on this for several years. This is a big effort, and it was a lot of contributing factors. So although I'm presenting it, it's a work of many hands. So just starting out with this slide 1, you'll see to the left is an outline of the downtown district. So there's the district, and then within the district is what we're calling the downtown core. So those are the development pieces, would be the downtown core. And then the district would be the study area. It's not the existing district. There is no existing district. There is a general plan designation, which is in the red. So we're looking at expanding that with the, or looking at getting consulting to see where we should expand that. And this outline was a result of a consultant that came and walked the downtown, that many of the council were involved in that, and the mayor and city staff. Let's see. Okay, and then council has been provided a copy of the full RFQ in your packets, but just to briefly provide an overview, the RFQ is a request for qualifications, and it's to solicit qualified professionals to assist with identifying, designating, planning, and the overall downtown district, so that larger area. So identify where exactly that should be. Right now, it's a larger area. We may want to adjust that a little bit. And then development of the downtown core, which is the smaller area, the area that was on the right. And if you want to refer in your packets, there's a little bit more detail in there. The project scope would involve, if successful, the respondents to this RFQ would also, after completing these 5 tasks, would enter into a development agreement with the city, which the city council would be able to review and comment on, for the development of the downtown core, or the development pieces. The intention here is for there to be regular updates to council and input from the city council. So that would be along this entire process.
Rusty, how does that process work? Because we haven't been involved yet, besides a couple council members.
Sure, we'll go over that.
Okay.
So again, this is the total area between the 2 parcels that are city-owned right now is about 5.39 acres. And these are meant to be a catalyst to drive the larger downtown district. So these would be the development parcels. So the city council would be involved in that, and also the larger area and any changes that would need to occur with that. And then this would be the RFQ process would be, we're proposing that the RFQ respondents be evaluated using this selected criteria, and we can adjust those. But really, this is to kick it off and get it started, get a team on board, and then that team would be meeting regularly with the Downtown Planning Committee with regular updates to the City Council, and any sort of approval items like the development agreement or changing of code along the way that might need to be adjusted as per the recommendations would be brought before the council. And then with the proposed steps and timeline would be that the RFQ is issued on April 1st, if approved, with the submissions due back by July 2nd. The selection committee would review and shortlist candidates and then make recommendations to the council, with the council having the final approval. And we assess that around August 2025, those interviews and final recommendations would be made to the council. And then that would then begin the process with the selected respondent or respondent team, and those regular updates would be made along the way. Are there any questions?
When we did this before, as I recall, you provided information for all of those who were interested. Am I correct on that, or was that a limited list?
Are you referring to the RFP that we did before on the other city-owned parcel? Mm-hmm. How we did that process?
Yeah, was it will this be a similar process to that?
I think so. It depends on how many respondents there are. If we have hundreds of respondents, and I think that we would rely on the Downtown Planning Committee to go through those based on this selection criteria, and then present, maybe the top 5 or something like that. We could set a percentage. We could do that however you'd like. But I think we want to make sure that they're at least responding to the details in the RFQ, and adequately responding and on time, and with it, and they're responding appropriately. Mm-hmm. So I think if we get some that don't fit that criteria, we could pull those out. But
so Rusty, to Councilman's question, St. George has done something similar to this recently. Do you want to maybe speak to the number of applicants that they had, and maybe to a little bit of what their process was? And Jeremy, if you want to jump in on that, I'm happy to
Jeremy knows a little bit more. He just whispered to me there were 14, but they did go through this process. They were very generous with their time and giving Washington City staff some kind of the lessons that they learned in their process and the things that they wish they could have done. And so all of that has been incorporated into this RFQ. We had drafted an RFQ, but then we met with St. George, and theirs was a little bit different. They're doing infill of an already existing downtown, whereas this is starting with a core with a downtown that will grow out from it. So it's a little bit opposite in that regard, but I think it's about the same size and of property with their recent RFQ, and they had some lessons learned, and they were really generous with their time. Do you have anything to add to that, Jeremy?
No, I think maybe to get back to Councilman Coates' question, that downtown committee, similar to what we've done with the Canal Trail Committee, met every 2 weeks with the winning RFQ applicant or firm. And then they came back to the council every few months during work meetings to make sure that they were updated and everything was moving along the way the council wanted. So we don't get to the end and then find out that, the council isn't on board with the direction we're headed.
And in our discussions, one thing that I appreciated that I think St. George did well is, currently we have one council member to that Downtown Economic Development Committee. I would anticipate that there would be 2 council members, short of 3, so we don't have a quorum. But I would anticipate having 2 council members being involved once once there's a selection and then we're going through that process. So I would have at least 2 council members and then probably monthly to quarterly updates.
So at this point, we're asking the council to consider approval of releasing the RFQ, and if there are any edits that needed to be made, we could talk about those. And then we would bring the recommended respondents back to the council for their review and ultimate decision on that.
Rusty, I just want to make sure I understand. Isn't it typical that an RFQ goes out first to say request for qualifications, but then after that, after it's narrowed down and you have that list, doesn't the request for proposal go out after that, or is that not typically?
You can do either. For example, with the city-owned parcel on the 11-acre parcel on Main Street, the top of Main Street on the north side of I-15, we did a RFP. We just did an RFP, and we wanted projects because that was a development only. In this case, we're looking at both planning and designating a downtown district. So that's one part of it, the planning and design of a downtown district. And then there are the development pieces. So that's the RFP piece of that. But we've kind of rolled that into one process where the winning respondent would have first right of refusal for the development of those parcels. So they would come in to advise and provide through workshops, through working with the council. It would be quite a process through working with community members, business owners. They would pull all of that into that planning and design, advising on where we may need to adjust code, and then city staff would go along with that, so that when it came time for development, they would then also have the first right of refusal for that. And we want to make sure it meets the market, it's financially feasible. I think we hit all of those in the RFQ outline. But if there's anything that you see that we may have overlooked or that we could add to that, we're happy to make adjustments.
Thank you. Councilman Coates?
Yeah, Rusty, just a couple questions. First off, I was surprised to see that our old police station, current IT/HR building's in the proposal. I didn't know that was part of the proposal when we first talked about this. What's our goal there with that building?
Well, I think the overall goal is flexibility. So we didn't want to carve it out and just say that it will stay when there may be something proposed that could incorporate that with some adjustments or extensions or even removal of that piece. It really just depends on, you have otherwise the entire block that's owned by the city.
That's good enough. I just was curious what the plan was.
We wanted to leave it open.
And it kind of stems to how come we didn't include the future post office / house below it that the city owns as well?
Sure, that's an important question.
So, and the reason why I bring it up is we understand that might be years down the road because they still have a lease with us and we have to work through that process with the federal government, which could take a long time. But ultimately, I think our goal was to incorporate that. And so do we need to include it? Not, I'm just looking for recommendations.
So it is included in the overall planning and design. It is not included in the development piece because the feedback that we received from council and through the meetings was that there was an interest in accelerating the downtown core. And so we had to identify the pieces that can be developed soon. But there, I think there is plans, future plans that would be design of how that space would be incorporated when the lease is up and we can
Thank you, Rusty.
review. Thank you.
I agree with Councilman Coates. I think that's an important component, and maybe down the road, but it has to have a good tie-in with what we're doing now so that we can utilize it the best we can at the right time.
I don't know if we can kick out the federal government either from that building.
Well, didn't I hear that
That has the answer.
Doge might be looking at post offices, so that might be accelerated there. I can't keep that list, but.
I don't know what to believe or not anymore. I'm sorry. Any more questions for Rusty? Councilman?
My only question is, so tonight we're just releasing that would go out for potential bids.
Tonight, yes, tonight we're
Authorizing.
approving, you're approving or considering approval of the release of the RFQ to go out on April 1st with the, and if you want to adjust these dates, we can, but April 1st with all of the respondents due back by July 2nd.
Okay.
So you're not locked into anything. All we're doing tonight is just putting it out. If you get to July and you don't like any of the proposals or you want to change your
I
course.
do feel like that's a pretty short timeline for people to put together, but between April and July 1st, to put together a plan, do all that. I know we want to accelerate it, but I would rather do a nicer plan. I don't know.
It's not to put together the plan. That's just for them to give us their qualifications and then we will pick, and then the planning process starts with them and the city. Is that
Okay.
It is a fairly short time frame for them to put it together, but I assume a lot of these firms already have a lot of this canned and ready to go. It's things like, did we put in that in the packet? It's things like,
Yeah.
what past projects have they worked on? What are their financial stability?
I just want to make
Have a
sure.
lot of that ready.
But those, and I said, it's 2 months, it's 3.
So
I
there's
said June, never mind.
the submission requirements are on not counting the cover page, the second page is where they start. So we're asking for their,
That's already
for
been
their,
mine.
what they would budget for what the cost would be for the planning, their experience, some examples, just some things to kind of vet the respondents and their team.
Thank you, Rusty. You've done a lot of work on this. Appreciate your preparation. Council, she is seeking your approval to send this out for qualified applicants to partner on a design of those core parcels as indicated. So I will turn to you now for further discussion and/or a motion on item 7B.
I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution for request for qualifications for the planning and design of Washington City Downtown District.
You've heard the motion by Councilman Coates. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Belliston, and we'll go roll call, starting with Councilmember Casperson.
Aye.
Belliston.
Aye.
Henderson. Coates. Ivy.
This is an exciting time. Aye.
Thanks, Rusty. We look forward to seeing what we get back after we send that out. Next item on the agenda is 8, which is agreement. This is consideration of a modified site plan and site plan agreement addendum for Stuckey Farms PCD. City Attorney Thad Sigmiller will present to the council on those amendments to the site plan at Stuckey Farms.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. For benefit of the public and those that might be listening or watching, I'm going to recite the history of this a little bit. Washington City's had a entitled PCD in the Southfields known as Stuckey Farms PCD for over a decade, nearly two. And in the last couple of years, the original owner of those development rights and the development land was seeking a chance to retire. Part of that included a sale to the current applicant. So the current applicant acquired the land, which was nearly 568 acres. Part of that acquisition included the acquisition of water rights and some other things, as well as the legality of the acquisition of the development rights that were vested in the zone change and also the development agreement. And so subsequent to the acquisition and the documenting of all of those things, one of which, the transfer of development rights under the development agreement required a council action in 2024. Subsequent, the developer kind of went to work. You've seen them a couple times on some of their concept plans, and they submitted an amended site plan. And this presentation tonight is the culmination on first impression of the council of efforts to negotiate and mediate some of the different positions that were expressed during the initial site plan application process. This is not a traditional land use process that we allow to every applicant. It was created because the city has been in a development agreement related to this land and these development rights for over a decade. And so the development agreement contains a paragraph that indicates that if there's a denial, the parties would attempt to mediate and try and resolve that. And so this tonight is presented by me as the city attorney that represented the city together with the city manager as we met with the applicants, attorneys, and representatives to try and weigh the interests and find a middle ground that might be agreeable to the council. And so I'll just get right into that. The recitals are pretty predictable because they're mostly just counting the history. There is one in there, and we've known about this for some time. The developer would like to change the name away from Stuckey Farms. The city does require that be an administrative zone change because the name itself was part of the original zone change. We review name changes, but not with a great degree of scrutiny. As long as it's not obscene or something of that nature, generally we allow people to name their projects what they want to name them. This last recital paragraph, I really think it gives us an overview of what we're doing, and it says the city and developer now desire to enter into this agreement to define and describe certain terms pertaining to developers' modified preliminary site plan, such as culinary water and secondary water usage with respect to the property and the proposed dedication of certain improvements to the city. One of the things that I think held it up or made things complicated as we initially kind of tackled the First Amendment was, for example, down here in Section 2, neither the city nor the developer disagreed about how many acres of water had been vested, but we weren't quite clear as to how we interpreted the word lakes and what that meant. And so part of what this agreement does is try to narrow that down with a definition that can be administered. So you'll see there in the blue the language, in an effort to conserve crucial water resources in an arid region. Sorry about that, Mayor. I think that was my thumb. I'm going to look here. In an arid region, and with the goal to clarify the usage of the vested lakes, developer agrees to reduce its vested rights to a total acreage of approximately 18.7 acres, with the specific usage of lakes defined as stormwater lagoons and recreational lagoons and/or ponds, which include mechanical wave making or surf recreation, as set forth in the modified preliminary site plan. The depiction of the site plan is Exhibit A. We'll get there once we get through the language. But that there is language that we didn't have when we first considered it. It also indicates a concession on behalf of the applicant from 25.4 acres down to 18.7. Specifically gives staff as well as the developer a definition. You can do 18.7 acres, but it has to fall within those, either a stormwater reservoir or lagoon, or a lagoon or pond or pool that includes wave or surf recreation.
So that, do we want to be more specific where it says the 6.7's the stormwater ponds and the 12.
So the site plan does have that
It
specificity.
does.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if we want to be more specific in the actual words as well.
So the way the agreement's written is it's a supplement to the site plan, and so both of those are reading in conjunction. We can add that language in there. Nobody would disagree with that. So that's
It's just
a good
sometimes
catch.
nice to have it right here, so.
Yep. So the blue or teal colors are essentially new terms or new areas of agreement. The yellow I've written as, this is language that we've added to document some of the concerns that council had presented. And so most of the yellow language is wording like you can't do this or you can't do that. So in this one, it says nothing in this document contemplates, allows, or obligates city-delivered culinary water for use in the lakes. And I know the council's expressed a strong concern on this many times, and I think the council would like the public to also know that with an action on this, they are not taking an action that puts the public's culinary or drinking water into lakes. It would have to be, as you'll see there in the second sentence, all of the water to be required or used in the lake shall be supplied by secondary water from developers' private secondary water sources. And so that's language that didn't exist originally that's now in there. Letter B is another section that accomplishes that purpose. You'll see in the yellow, this agreement intends to disallow developer from making or claiming any future right or demand, request, or use of city's culinary water sources in the lakes. The sentence before that essentially acknowledges that this is a dry area, that there's risks that are foreseeable of, shortages or failures of quality or quantity. And that language, again, is just reaffirming that if those were to happen in the future, they don't get to come and ask for culinary water. Paragraph C has a little bit of both. This one is referring to the system that the applicant's going to have to use to treat their secondary water, a reverse osmosis system, and it's clarifying that this agreement does not permit them to discharge the byproducts of reverse osmosis into the sewer system, and so they're going to have a plan to take care of those things. They'll have to present it to the city. So the blue language in letter C essentially requires that they submit plans and they go through the process of presenting to the city how they're going to take care of the byproduct of reverse osmosis so that it's not something that becomes a pollutant or a problem for the city systems. Councilman?
The question I had, I put down Orin Technologies, just because what if they decide not to use reverse osmosis? I mean, there's other technologies out there that could potentially be made. I just want to make sure that we have some language in there that deals with any future technologies potentials. And then the other question I had is, in the buildings for those reverse osmosis or future technologies, I mean, I'm assuming we'll allow culinary water for their restrooms and their safety procedures, but there'll be no culinary water use for any of the treating of the water. Somehow we need to address that.
Okay. Subsection D.
Thad, who is it that approves their waste water, program? Is it our staff, or does the health department get involved in that, or the Water Conservancy District, or?
Probably a yes to all three of those in a way. Not all of those have an administrative process they have to satisfy. Our city staff would look at the amenity to the extent that it's a structure and that it's discharging something. The water district, through their role with the the regional sewer system, would have an interest in what they're doing as far as discharge into the sewer. We would also require professional plans be submitted by the applicant together with their building permit application for that. And so the answer is, yeah, there's probably several layers of agency interest in that facility and how it functions.
Thanks.
Same for the lagoons, recreational lagoons. Is it the health department or the state that does?
So
that would be monitoring those.
So the lagoons and their suitability for human use is something that the state regulates and tracks. And so, yeah, that's why I was telling the councilman yes on that one as well. So the state wouldn't so much be looking at the nature of the building they build or the reverse osmosis system, that would be something that would be done by their professionals, but the state would look at the quality of the water, they would test it, and they would continue testing it to make sure that it meets whatever classification they establish it as. And so the state would be in the water quality realm, which is Washington City's glad for, because we don't have anybody with that expertise, and we don't have a practice of testing water quality outside of our culinary water system, which we do test and monitor on a daily basis. And as you've seen, that water won't be part of these ponds. So the state will be testing what they do with their secondary water in those ponds.
And so if the state, says that, the water for some reason they're not able to use that water, that would still, the city would still not, have any obligation to use our culinary water. That's what it
Correct.
clearly states in
Yeah.
here.
What the state does is their water quality division actually has the authority from state legislation to issue like a stop use type order if they find that it was to be out of the quality parameters required for that use. And so the state could essentially give them a stop use order until they either corrected it or found a source that would accomplish what the state requires for that type of use. Letter D is talking about one of the issues that was discussed quite a bit, which is the applicant acquired as part of their purchase shares in the St. George and Washington Canal Company, and the city is intending to develop a secondary water system in the future. What this language in the blue states is that if the city were to install a secondary water system that had service at their property, and if the developer wanted to use that, they could exchange those shares to the city in exchange for a discounted access to the city's secondary water. And so this still goes to extents to make sure that it's not a culinary water right, but they would have the right to essentially trade their canal shares to the city, and the city would provide them service from the secondary water system that could be used in the lagoons, excluding the stormwater lagoon.
So that just, I'm gonna go down to where it states the future written agreement. So the future written agreement shall also contemplate and provide for developer a monthly credit in secondary water use that is proportionally equal to the amount of water previously necessary to keep and maintain water systems used within the recreation lakes that include mechanical wave making or surf installation. So do you feel like, you probably don't because you wrote it, but I feel like when I read this, I'm putting something on the future decision on something that we don't have answers to today. I'm wondering if we just need to work on an agreement of how we deal with it. Is that, I kind of feel like you said that, but then it got very specific of monthly credits and secondary. But
So yeah, this is saying that we don't know how much water it takes because none of them have water in them, right?
I
We
just don't-
also don't know if the city will have a secondary water system there because we don't currently.
Yeah.
So this is saying that if the city gets a system and they want access to it, they would give us shares, and then we would sign an agreement that tries to quantify how much water they're giving the city and how much water the city replaces from that conveyance of the water shares.
Does this also, I guess, put a lien against shares that they have?
It does not. It puts a contract right against it, but it wouldn't be considered a lien or a security interest at this point. We'd have to have a further.
Don't you think it should?
I don't think so. There's too many ifs at this point. We don't have a water system to even give them at this point. And so no, I don't think it needs to be something that we tie up with a lien or a security interest.
So I get that you're saying that, and I'm no attorney, so
You don't have to agree with me. I'm explaining to you what's on
I
the
don't
document.
agree with you. I just, and I trust you that. I get nervous that we're going down a road that, I mean, I want more solidified stuff, but I understand they don't feel like they can do that right now. So I'm trying to understand, what I'm trying not to do is hurt us in the future if we're just saying, I don't want to hurt us saying, well, we have to do a monthly credit now, right? Like, what if there's a different avenue that works for both parties in the future? That's all I'm trying to say is,
Yeah, so I use the word contemplate intentionally. It doesn't say it must. It says they need to think about how much water they were using before the city system showed up, how much they're gonna need from the city system, the concept of equity that we were reaching with them, because for a while we were trying to talk about numbers and values and market prices of all of
Yeah.
this. The concept is the amount that they no longer have to use because they're gonna cease using their secondary water.
We could incorporate it in our
We-
second
They
water
would
system.
get, they
and
would get a
could-
gallon for gallon credit.
And the only thing I would add is that, and it's maybe just for the record, that there is cost to get it there. So
Yeah.
if we have to pump it or any of those, be included in this, and we'd have to account for any future cost to get the water to that place in
Correct.
that, so. And
Yeah, there's a number of other metrics that I think are valid for a future agreement when we know them. The secondary water system from the city might be a much higher quality, and we might say, hey, this water's more valuable than what you were using, and so by giving it to you, you also have to spend a lot less money in reverse osmosis expenses, so we're not gonna give you a gallon for gallon credit. So there's a lot of details that someday a reasonable representative of the city and a reasonable representative of the applicant can figure out if it's possible.
if it's feasible,
Sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
I was gonna say, but at least in the case of the canals, we do know the status of, the quality. Right?
We know that they aren't high quality at this point, yeah, they're intermittent.
There's
in the
There's
summer,
definitely
they're
a
really-
process to get them quality for this type of use.
Yeah, in the summer, they're really salty, in the winter, they're really turbid and silty. And so yeah, and you gotta get them out of the canal, so they aren't available everywhere. So we know that Washington City's got a plan for secondary water system, and we have identified points where we could receive service of canal water from those shares. But we also would need to develop and build that out as well. And so we don't have the ability to collect water from canal shares at this point ourselves either. There's no connection between the canal and our system.
So Thad, my last question on this paragraph is, understand the last sentence. It is further understood that limitations to use of culinary water stated in this agreement are not intended to apply for the hospitality village, which is the commercial area within Village 28. Why is that in here?
The applicant wanted to have this language in there. What they're trying to clarify is that culinary water might be used for a hotel pool, for example. And so they're trying to clarify that limitations against the use of culinary in the lakes and lagoons does not apply to pools from an HOA pool or a hotel pool of that type.
And we should be specific. I think this language doesn't apply
That is
here.
specific. Hospitality Village, that's where those uses will be. And you'll understand that a little better when you see the exhibit. There is also a subsequent paragraph that describes Hospitality Village. So I feel that's as specific as we're going to get while we're just site planning.
Thad, would you just clarify one thing, please?
Yes.
If someone were to come in and build a motel and they build a pool, they would be allowed to use culinary water the way
Correct.
things are right now.
We entitled, the hotels at the Green Spring intersection, those use culinary water. They've been built in the last year or two. And so it is the policy applied by the city at this point that hotels use culinary water. in
So
their
we would
pools.
want to use, not afford this development group the same as everyone else in the city.
Yeah, we're trying to avoid the arbitrary and capricious, which basically means we treat
Everyone the
one
same.
landowner differently than the others. And so, yeah, we would propose that this one be treated to the extent that they're building hospitality type water usage that is there for the guests to use when they come to our area. They would be able to have the same allowance that other hotels have had. Or HOAs, a lot of HOAs get a pool and it uses culinary water as well. Letter E, I want to just make sure as we read this, we recognize that it doesn't guarantee that a building permit application gets approved. It says that the city will work with developer to submit building permit applications for the lakes in recognition that it is planned for the lakes to be constructed and maintained as permanent structures. This was one of the issues that was unclear originally. We understand from the applicant's information that these will be structures that have concrete and rebar and reinforcing and other equipment and mechanisms. And so one of the city's positions is they need to submit building permits for these so that we can review those as if they were a permanent structure. We do that on other swimming pools, and so it would apply the same as that. So this paragraph saying that we'll help them get applications submitted, but there's still an administrative process that'll need to be approved or denied by our professional staff that review plans.
So will these basically be treated like a swimming pool? Same kind of permitting process and
Correct.
requirements and things?
Correct.
Except they can't use culinary water like swimming pools.
Correct. So, yeah, we've got two different categories. So a hotel pool would be treated like a swimming pool, and it would have access to the city's culinary water system. A wave or surf lagoon would be treated like a swimming pool structure, but it would need to be filled with a separate secondary water source system from the applicant. Section 3, dedication of public park. The original vesting included 16.3 acres of ball fields and 16.3 acres of parks. It was unclear as to whether those would be private spaces or public spaces. We also recognize that in the last 16 or so years, the amount of open spaces and watered spaces and the public perception of that has changed. And so this section tries to address that.
So it's unclear whether or not it was public or private, but it was up to the PCD to construct it.
Correct.
Correct.
Correct. The development agreement was more clear that they were private, less clear that there was no reference that required that they be public. So reading in the blue, subject to the city's approval of the modified preliminary site plan. And so that's the trigger for the next language. The developer shall dedicate the ball field, BF parcels, the ball field parcel to the city at any of the following time sequences. And the first sequence is a preliminary plat that contains that parcel. They would dedicate it to the city in its preliminary plat. Number 2 would be a preliminary plat that is adjacent to that parcel. So if they're platting land adjacent to it, they would need to dedicate it to the city in that plat. And number 3 would be a preliminary plat that covers any boundary of the parcel. And so the concept here is essentially, while the developer is developing and haven't reached that area yet, there's not even public access, there won't be a public road. So the city wouldn't be building any parks when there's not a public access to the parks. And so this concept is, as soon as their development activities reach that area or next to that area, they need to dedicate it to the city so the city can start planning for a park.
There's no requirement for them to participate in the construction of the park aside through, or except through the PID.
No, the PID would not build the park, neither would they. This would be raw land dedicated to the city. So yeah, there's the PID, neither the PID nor the developer are required to actually construct the park.
Okay, I might have read that wrong then. The PID was going to be used for public improvements and public safety.
So I've scrolled up to the PID section there. This is, as you know, a PID is a separate district that requires a separate legislative process. And so this language is, there's no promises here. It's really just conceptual. It's letting the city know that they would like or intend to apply for a PID. I don't see in that language anything that says that the PID will build the park. I think by public infrastructure, they're referring to roads and utility systems, water, sewer, and storm drain. And so part of that is me interpreting the prior paragraph that says they'll give to the city 10 acres of raw land. But yeah, I don't interpret that to mean that they're building the park. I interpret that to mean that they're building everything else.
So Thad, when I read it, I interpreted the same thing Councilman Pelliston did, is that the PID was paying, I interpreted that they weren't gonna, when I read it, wasn't going to give us the park land and the fire station land unless we provide them a PID. And
Yeah,
makes me
that's not how it
concerned.
reads. So if you go back up to that section, subject to the city's approval of the modified preliminary site plan. So the trigger for the park conveyance is the council's approval of the modified site plan. It would not be dedicated until their development activities have reached that location.
where does that say that at? Sorry.
Right there, the blue, the very first sentence, subject to the city's approval of the modified preliminary site plan. comma, the developer shall dedicate the ball field parcel to the city at any of the following sequences. So it has, the PID is not triggered in this dedication.
So Thad, when it says that in effort to acknowledge developers' invested value in the parcel, city will work with developer to create a PID. So there's still, regardless if the PID is approved later on, they're still dedicating this parcel and also the fire station parcel to the city regardless of the outcome of the approval of the PID.
Correct. Yeah, so the PID is essentially a concept that would help them, and the city's expressed a willingness to let them apply for it because we would let them apply for it today without this agreement. So a developer of this type can apply for a PID yesterday, they can apply for one today and tomorrow without this. This is saying, kind of preparing the room for what they would like to desire, which is for some of their non-residential villages, they would like to apply for a PID, which such an application falls within our current PID policy.
So
But this is not saying that the PID must be approved before the dedication triggers. That's not what it's saying.
I get that, but in this document that was just shared with us,
That's not the document.
That was just
the mayor's
me, some
document.
notes.
Yeah.
That's just, those aren't official.
well, then it looks like you read it the same way too, because it's under the public park, it discusses a PID, and under fire station parcel, it discusses a PID. So
So
I think
both of those,
we're all confused.
well, I'm here to clarify your confusion. Both of
Okay.
those sections mention the PID.
Okay.
So we're talking about it right here. I'm walking through the language. If you look at yellow, the yellow has an important thing that I think pertains to your questions. Both parties agree that a PID application to the city per Utah state law requires separate legislative action of the Washington City Council, and nothing in this agreement is intended to require or compel the city council vote in any specific direction. So
I get
again,
that.
the intent is not that a PID is promised in exchange for this land. The land is promised in exchange for approval of this amended site plan.
I totally understand, but if a PID in the future were to get approved, the PID, none of the PID is going to be, I guess what I'm getting at is,
So the city
the
could
city
agree.
is going to be, is going to bear the sole burden of the improvements on both parcels.
So this agreement's silent to that. I think the city council could agree to have their park put in the PID boundary and have a levy assessed against it if you want. If you wanted that, I think that's a future topic. This doesn't address that. This just is saying that they can apply for a PID. As you know, the city's had land in one of the other PIDs that was approved in our city, right? But if the city council wanted the park to be there and be subject to a levy, I think that's a conversation that the city council can have with the applicant. And my perception from the applicant is they'd be open to that conversation with you. But this is not deciding any of that clarity today. And the reason why is if you passed a motion right now, 5-0, that said approve a PID, it would be invalid because we haven't followed state law, right? There's a state process that we got to go through. Tonight is not a PID approval, but it is informing the council that they would like, if you approve their site plan, they're probably going to come and talk to you about a PID when they're ready.
Perceive it's a PID approval. I agree with you. I'm just looking at it. I'm doing numbers in my head, right? So they go from 32 acres that they have full responsibility to improve to 10 acres that they have no responsibility to improve, aside from potentially maybe down the road that there's a PID assessed, or it's on the taxpayer's dollar to improve those parcels.
Correct, yeah.
So it's a net.
That's
That's all I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. This would get the city fee ownership of raw land that they were not promised, that they aren't currently promised. And the city would be able to guarantee that 10 of those acres be public park spaces, not just, behind HOA fences and things like that. And it would also get the city 2 acres with fee ownership to build a fire station, which, as I understand it, the fire department perceives that if this development were to build out, there will be a need in that area for a fire station. And so that's what the proposed compromise in this document presents.
But why do we have to talk about a PID?
They wanted to talk about a PID, so we put it in there as a compromise. We're talking about a PID because that was one of the interests they wanted the council to hear as part of the compromise that was made.
I've heard you. Why is it in an agreement? I'm just struggling with the PID. Because I would say I'm for PIDs,
So
but
it's
I just
in
don't
the-
understand why
It's
we're
in the
talking
agreement,
about a
that
PID.
first sentence. to acknowledge that they have value. When they came and bought this 560 acres, the price they paid included a calculation for 10 of those 560 acres, right? So this land is commercially zoned, so it's in here to acknowledge on the city's behalf that it has value.
And I don't want to discredit it doesn't have value, because it does. I'm going to acknowledge that both those lands have value. They have value to them, and they have value to us. The thing that I'm struggling with is 32.6 acres they were supposed to construct. Now they're asking us to take the 10 acres. They're donating the land, if we want to call it that. Now we have to pay for it. Oh, and by the way, we're going to tie this to a PID discussion, even if it's a discussion, and I'm just struggling with it, because
So they might prefer 32 acres if you want it. I thought that the concept the city council wanted was some guarantee of public park space down there.
So here's my thing about a development like this. Who's going to use the park space? They're residents, right? I mean, I'm not saying I don't know. It's the residents around. It's usually, I'm not saying that there won't be some people that come in that don't, because people don't know if it's public or private unless it's fenced.
If you use Coral Canyon as an example, but for the city requiring a 4-acre park there, the city holds their recreation leagues on that park. Family, and so there's a park in Coral Canyon in the middle of a development much like this one will be, that has vast public usage of non-residents as well as of the city's usage. The city hosts their T-ball there, they host their flag football leagues there.
And it's a public park.
And so the concept here is, from a PCD approval that didn't require any of the 32 be public, this is acquiring public space.
And that developer built it, paid for it, and donated it. Same with
believe so.
And Highland Park as well, which is a massive park.
Yeah, I believe so.
Well, those aren't good ones to
So,
compare.
but let me, there's,
Just comparing
but
what
your
we
point,
have.
but
To compare, because they have an agreement that they don't have to pay impact fees. So it's
Well-
again, this was a PCD application. The city and them
But we covered that
negotiated and
too.
came up with a way to.
So if you look at paragraph C, the last 2 lines of the blue, developer agrees that neither developer nor the PID may be entitled to make claim for any park impact fee credits for the ball field parcel. So the developers that build our parks get credits from the impact fees where those are identified. We've specifically covered that here. Because they're not giving us anything, they don't get to claim any impact fee credits related to the park. And so we thought that through. We're trying to make sure that it's, that the agreement represents the reality there, which is you don't get to claim impact fee credits if you're not building the park.
No, I know there's a struggle because we put language that references a PID or a PID in this. Nothing in that yellow references the PID is anything that they can't do already. Even if we struck all that language, they can still bring a PID application anytime they want. It was just part of the negotiation with them. They wanted you to see that they intend to bring it, just have that language and have the council understand that. But it's nothing, we're not giving anything that they already don't have the right to do.
Clarification. No, go ahead. So clarification then, the developer has no reasonable expectation right now of getting a PID. It's separate from this conversation. They come at the future date after this is, and then the council will hear it on its own merits and decide at that time. There's no entitlements now. It's just, they've added it just for maybe to ease in at a future date. But if the council doesn't want a PID in the future, then there won't be a PID. Is that correct?
That's accurate. There's nothing in this agreement tonight that guarantees they get a PID. Their attorneys and their representatives are fully aware of Utah law that it requires. There's a whole process with PIDs. You've got to identify a boundary, right? You've got to have a public hearing. You've got to go through a whole process. None of that's been satisfied. So this is not guaranteeing them a PID. And it is indicating to the council that they, like many developers we talk to, think a PID might be a useful tool for their project.
So you probably can't answer this.
I'll try.
Maybe Drew can. The current park that's in Stuckey Farms, that was built by Stuckey Farms, were there impact fee credits relieved for that?
There weren't. It's a private park.
Because it's a private park.
Yeah, there weren't any impact fee credits there.
So they didn't get the benefit of the impact fee reduction, and they also built the park. And that's how the PCD currently contemplates
They
the
also-
32 acres
They
that's here.
also kick off residents that go there that aren't members, yeah.
No doubt about it, but they also didn't build it up to city standards either.
Yeah, so
It is pretty heavily used by the residents.
I've heard that there's residents that don't live there that use it.
Well,
So the two models are build us a park and finish the surface and we'll give you impact fee credits. Or give us a park with nothing on it and we don't give you impact fee credits. And so that's, the model here is because we wanted to clarify and pull public land out of what could have all been private within HOAs. So they could have built 32 acres just for their associations to use, right? And this is converting some of that to public. It's also reducing the total acreage amount so that we just aren't requiring as much irrigated land as maybe we thought was a good idea back in the early 2000s.
But outside of the irrigation, because we've all said it's not good if it's like ornamental, but if it's usable, which we need, we definitely, I mean, we're always out of field space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, HOAs also get to use culinary water for their irrigation, right? That's also the current thing. So that's the idea, is we're trying to be able to present to the public that we've tried to reduce the amount of culinary water usage on this developer's application. The reason we tried to do that is that's what the council indicated they wanted us to do. Section 4 is fire station. It reads a lot like the other one, has a similar PID paragraph. The one thing I want to show you, and this one's a little different, you'll see, again, subject to the city's approval of the modified preliminary site plan. Again, that's the trigger. Approval of the site plan is what triggers their obligation to convey this land to the city. The developer will deed the fire station parcel to the city within 90 days of the effective date. So this one's much quicker. This location is still going to have the same problem as the park, meaning if there's not any public roads dedicated, the city doesn't have public access. We're kind of landlocked to it. But an earlier dedication does allow the fire department and the city to start planning for the construction of that at a quicker pace.
that I must have missed it. Is that identified in the site plan, the location?
It is. I'll
Where
show you
at?
when we get there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's right on the site plan. The rest of it's very similar. So this paragraph B is identical to the paragraph B on the parkland. Looks like Councilman's showing you where it is, right there in green. Yeah, identical, except that it refers to it as the fire station parcel and not the ball field parcel. It's got the same restrictive language that the parties recognize that, no PIDs are granted here. Fire stations are also unique because we don't usually require developers to build them, and so they're giving us the raw land. We would build the fire station like we do all of our others. And there's language in here that also says they're not entitled to any impact fee claim for fire station construction.
So with that, on both these applications, the park and the fire station, where is it if we decide we need to go first? Like, say all of a sudden we feel the need that we need to obtain the park property or the fire station is, I mean, the land's being deed over in 90 days, but I'm more talking about the road improvements. Because in the agreement, it says if they develop, we will pay for the road up front. Where does it protect us? What if we need to build a road and they have to help contribute, build the other half of the road?
So they're required to build the road. Part of that's contemplating that we already built the main road for them. So we already built Fields Road and it's benefited them. So they're required to build the road. The city's required to build the developer improvements along the road, which, as you know, is an added section of asphalt, curb, gutter, sidewalk, and such, right? And so in both of those, the city is carrying the costs that would be impact fee reimbursable. That's tied to the section that says we're not giving you any impact fee credits for this, right? And so if the city wanted these to be built sooner, none of that's contemplated here. We'd have to go negotiate with them and come up with a way to get it built sooner on the time frame that's relevant to that need.
Okay.
And so it's not in here.
I think based on what you just told me, you're saying we're building not the main center of the road, but
They're building the main road.
That's not what I read here. Maybe, I just saw that it
So if
says
you look at the
curb,
last-
gutter, sidewalk, parking
Look at the
areas.
last sentence of section E. Developers shall be required to build and install the minimum roadway width of any public road to be dedicated along any border of the fire station parcel. And so they've got to build that impact fee.
What is that, though? Is it
Depends
26
on
feet?
depends on the classification of the road. Because the road that runs along both of these parcels is not part of the master plan yet, we don't actually have it classified. It's the road that runs along them under the site plan tonight isn't even approved because we're working on an old site plan with a new one. We'll be able to know that if the council approves the site plan and we move forward in that direction, we'll be able to know better for you what that would be, but we don't know it tonight. Because the old site plan doesn't even show a road at that location.
They would build the main road and their curb and gutter on that side, and we will take care of the small amount of asphalt and the remaining curb gutter and sidewalk / trail on the
Precisely.
park /
Yeah. And the reason why is we don't want them to have a claim to impact fees. We've got that section in there. So the city's gonna handle all the impact fee eligible expenses with impact fees that we've collected. Hospitality Village, this is a section that presents to you some of the concepts of what the Hospitality Village is. I didn't use any teal or yellow colors because really we just want you to know in this section what they're intending with the site plan where you show it, the uses that would be in there. Village 28 does not exist in the currently approved site plan, so this would be a new village designation. They're designating it the Hospitality Village, which they describe as a blend of commercial, recreational, and residential hospitality uses. Permitted uses would be indoor and outdoor recreational facilities, including the operation of a recreational lagoon and surf park, food, restaurant, retail shops, professional services, professional office, gym, fitness, cosmetics, beauty, medical, personal care, personal instruction, training, athletic, sporting goods, and various residential housing types.
Does Hospitality Village, is the density in the Hospitality Village part of the density of the 2334?
It is not. As our planning department counts, they do not count commercial housing units as ERUs.
So the addition of the Hospitality Village is an addition to over and above the increase in density that they're asking for?
No, if it's commercial housing, it's not. If they have residential housing in there, that they would need to count those as ERUs towards their density. My understanding is they're
Well,
not
that's what
planning
it
any.
says, in various residential housing types.
Yeah, well, if you keep reading, the housing types will be constructed in a manner that allows nightly rentals, condo hotels, townhomes, twin homes, cottages, single-family homes. And so if those are nightly rentals pursuant to the way the city counts in every other nightly rental in our city, those would not count toward density ERUs.
The nightly rentals count towards density in my neighborhood.
I don't know, I haven't done that calculation, but my understanding is if it's a nightly rental and it's commercially used, we don't count it
They
towards
do in
density.
Sienna Hills and Coral Canyon.
But you're right, they would, and I think the ones in that 3 Peninsula area would be counted as residential units.
If they're would or
Because they're
wouldn't.
privately owned, as a secondary, and people we doing them. I think we were just talking about over on the other side of the ponds. That was in the original conversation, so.
Want to know what the real number is then. If it's 2334, then great. If it's 2334 plus 15 acres of hospitality, that's any number of mix of this and that, add it up. If it's a 250 room hotel,
It's added up in there for you, Councilman. If it's a hotel, it's not counted towards ERUs. If it's a single-family residence, it's counted towards ERUs. What we don't have yet is their actual submitted plats and site plans for all of those, so we aren't able to count those yet, but this document's added it up. It's there.
Okay.
Nothing promised in there from the city. It's mostly just a description of the concepts that they intend to bring to the city if the council approves the site plan. You'll see a little language here. Both parties agree that a zone change application requires separate legislative action. So again, language that protects the city. Nothing in this is giving them zoning rights or zoning guarantees. They still need to bring the zone application and run it through its traditional process.
Should we add some language that they must abide by Washington City vacation rental requirements ordinance?
If you want to, that already is true. They have to abide by that, but yeah, I'm happy to put that in there.
Since this is an agreement that we're letting
So we
everyone
have
know.
one, we have a paragraph at the end that says that, but if you want it to just be specifically to our vacation ordinance, we can
Just-
certainly do that.
Just because we talked about the vacation rentals right here, I just, in my note, I wrote,
Happy to do that.
Must abide by.
Neither party would disagree with that. They intend to comply with the city code. So yeah, that's not a problem at all. Section 6 is what they call mixed-use villages. It's It includes some existing village numbers, villages 12B, 13, and 14. 26 is a new one. And so when you see the site plan, I'm sure you've already looked at it, but because they've reworked some things, 26 is a new designation. The uses here, imagine kind of a vertical multi-use. And so you'll have things like residential on the upper floors, restaurants, services, and other things on the lower floors. Permitted uses include but are not limited to outdoor recreational facilities, bed and breakfast, hotel, motel, condotel, professional office, food service, retail shops. Again, the lists sound very similar. We don't know precisely what that'll be because we don't have any applications. We haven't even allowed applications that would start to try to plan this until they've got an approval of the site plan from the council. Last paragraph there, again, protective language. Parties agree that a zone change application is required per state law, that this agreement and its passage has not satisfied that. Section 7 on short-term rental overlays, they're going to need to submit a zone change that moves those from the area they're currently permitted to be operative and moves them to the area where they would like them. Nothing in here contemplates additional nightly rental spaces, but it does allow them to move those to a different location in a new site plan. This is another area, because it's a zone change, we've got this little paragraph that says everybody agrees that you've got to bring a separate legislative action for that. Here's the density section. This was a significant part, as you all know. I'm going to read the blue language. In an effort to conserve outdoor water use and promote contemporary density standards that allow for the construction of additional residential units and residential zones in Washington City, the parties agree to increase the remaining residential density transferred to developer to 2,334. The per acre residential density allocation does not apply to the hospitality village, which we mentioned earlier in section 5, because it's intended to be a non-residential commercial area. And so that's where my comments were coming from, Councilman Belliston. They've not told us they're going to have individual resident or personal residential in there. They intend for it to be hospitality-related, business, residential, or commercial rooms.
I understand and I agree, but there still is a density or door calculation that they're going to be asking for, whether it's a hotel or vacation rental or commercial unit or whatever, right?
You're absolutely right.
And so
Yeah.
like I said, I just want to know what the real number is.
We don't know for the commercial
You can say
spaces yet.
residential, yes, but there's still a density associated with it in the PCDs. Like I said, Sienna and Coral Canyon both account for those commercial areas in their density calculations and adjustments.
So that's the real number that's requested.
No, so I agree with
We
Councilman
don't
Belliston.
know, so a hotel or a condotel, we don't know what those are yet. There
I
is
know, but
no-
we have a max. Sienna Hill, Coral Canyon, there's a max. There's so many key units that is allowed on those densities. We usually have a max. I understand there could be some flexibility. How can we not assign a number to it to identify? We can't just leave it open. They can do whatever they want.
So the reason is the prior PCD approval did not contemplate hotels and condotels, right? They didn't contemplate that type of commercial, and so this is an added use, this is an added concept, and there isn't currently, so we say Sienna Hills had it, but that's because Sienna Hills had it from the outset, right? There is not currently in the Stuckey Farm PCD approval any language that talks to that.
I agree, but there
counting
also
those
wasn't
rooms.
2,300 units in this PCD currently. They're asking for a new, so
You're right.
saying, tell us what it is and we'll go through it. Like, I am not comfortable at all moving forward, not understanding what we're getting there. Like, we have to understand,
What is it you'd like to understand? How many hotel rooms they're intending to build?
we have to know hotels, if we're talking the vacation rental, is it condo buildings? Is it like, there's got to be some kind of plan that can be attached to this so that future councils can say,
So let me explain the catch-22. I've not let them submit any of that because the site plan that's approved doesn't allow any of that. So we're trying to get the concept of a site plan that can allow that so we can know what those might be someday.
I understand that. They're asking for a PCD amendment, right? So if they want to amend the PCD, then that's what they need
They're
to
asking for a
show.
site plan amendment so that they can go do the work to then bring you the next stuff.
Let me try to explain it like this. I think probably a more contemporary PCD would be the Salente PCD that we did. Salente has a total number density count, but then they also have this concept, they wanted to bring a hotel that might have individual bungalows or things that look like individual residential units, but they're all managed by the hotel. And we didn't count any of that in the Salente PCD. So our count is residential density, and that's what we're still counting here. So if they bring something that looks like an individual residence that happens to have a nightly rental overlay zone, that would count in their residential. What we're not counting is all the commercial hospitality uses.
Is parcel,
Residential. So
is
you
village, oh, sorry.
don't get to go in and buy one and say, we're gonna put in 20 more and 20 of us are gonna buy them.
It's gonna be owned by one entity. Village 28 is gonna be owned by one entity and it's gonna be managed that way.
It may not be one entity, but it might be 5 different entities. You know, it might be 3 different properties. I mean, again, we don't have it yet, but that's the similar concept to what we did with the Salente PCD, as we said, the commercial uses aren't going to count towards the residential density numbers.
So in my neighborhood, right, because I live in vacation rental land over there.
Count, and if they all look like yours, they would also count. If they were all individually owned, nightly rental overlays, they would count, as I understand it.
Not what I'm reading, but that's fine. I'm just saying that, they're proposing the hospitality area and the overnight rentals and, whatever else, but they don't want to put a number to it, but we're having problems with people that are saying, hey, well, they're advertising up to 45 people to come on down and stay in southern Utah. I'm sorry, there's a density component that the neighborhood feels when they show up like that, right? So I think all I'm saying is, if you want to add 250 units of hospitality, put that in there. I'm asking for 250 units of hospitality, great. Then I don't care if it's in bungalows or in a high rise.
I think it's okay to ask for it. We just haven't asked anybody else to do it. And that's why we don't have it included in this. So it's not something that we missed. It's something that we haven't asked anyone else to do. So if that's something that you'd like to see, do it. But it's something that we haven't had anybody.
The precedent would be due, because I can point, Sienna and Coral, it is included in theirs, so.
Now, again,
No,
I
it's
think this
not.
document contemplates, you'll see the last paragraph. They still have to come and bring a zone change application and show you all that when they do it, right? So even the density number needs to have a zone change application. They're gonna have to do that and clean that up. And so even the density that we've talked about a lot, they've still gotta bring it to a zone change. Really what I'm trying to make sure is it gets noticed as a zone change, that the public hearing occurs so the public can comment. So then the planning commission can make a recommendation and then the council can make a decision. And so even this number needs to be subject to a zone change of the
So
PCD.
say it gets presented as a zone change to the PCD and it's not agreed upon to the 2334 plus village 28.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you're saying.
What's the ramifications if once we see their plan, we don't agree with the density? I mean, you're basically saying that
This is saying if you approve this supplement to the site plan, this is saying that the city council would agree that they can have up to 2,334 ERUs for residential units. If you then denied a residential zone change that was within that, you'd have to confront just the arbitrary and capricious doctrines, right? You can't vest things and then deny them. The way staff administers it is they keep track. Every time an application comes through, they count the ERUs, and then they subtract from that number. And eventually, they start getting denials from administrative decisions when they're applying for ERUs that they no longer have left. So staff just kind of subtracts as they go. The development agreement says that they have the ability to move density between villages. And again, because we haven't specifically designed any of these villages, we don't quite know exactly what's going to go where, but that's how it would be administered, is of that type. And so
Dad, can I stop you right there? So this is how we've done it on all the other developers for years. This is not out of the ordinary. This is the same, the ERUs or the residential, the other numbers come later.
Correct.
All previous applicants, this is not out of the ordinary for this.
correct. So recently, we had a zone change at Long Valley, where they had previously had zoning that contemplated an elementary school. School district let the developer know that that's not going to happen, and so they brought in a zone change. Part of that was the city gave them additional density. In exchange, they got more units, And they also gave the city a 2-acre fire station parcel. So that all was subject to a zone change application. Even though it's an approved PCD with a development agreement, they had to submit it to our planning and zoning department. They reviewed it, they accepted it. It then got noticed through the state's noticing system. A public hearing was heard at the planning commission. The planning commission heard it and made recommendations, and then the city council made the decision. And so
This is asking us to approve it prior to the zone change application.
No, this is saying that they have to bring a zone change. That's what that last paragraph means. We've had it 6 times in the agreement. So this is saying that we agree as to the site plan, they can plan for 2,334, but they have to bring that as a zone change.
But I thought you just said that if we sign this, then they'd get up to 2,334 residential units plus Village 28.
In general, with the site plan, that's what it's saying, but it's saying that they have to bring a zone change application to codify that as a change in their PCD. This is not, this document is not a zone change, is what I'm saying.
I understand that,
So this
but-
is a mediated agreement, and they need to bring a zone change that puts many of these terms into action.
Yeah, but you also said that if we agree to this, then they're essentially vested in that number, that it would be arbitrary and capricious if we didn't then approve it when they did submit a zone change down the road. So we're essentially agreeing to a density change before a zone change.
You're agreeing to a density increase, yeah, in contract, but it's not a zone change. And so they need to bring a zone change that would.
We're agreeing
codify
to a vesting them that right.
You're correct.
Okay.
You're being asked to agree to an increase in the residential density that they can build.
And that
I mean, it's also-
includes everything with the exception of the commercial areas, like the Village 28.
That includes all the residential units that they would build.
So like the
Yeah.
overlay
So whether
would be
it's a
included in with
single-family
that.
home, a condo, twin home, if it meets the definition of a residential unit in our code, that would be counted as one residential unit.
We remember, and this is a little bit off topic, but I think it's relevant. Wasn't these a significant amount of affordable or close to affordable price points, or help me remember that?
There's been some of that said. I can't say that I've seen anything to know what it'll be.
Thought is that it's going to strive to be that.
The concept is they'll go from larger lots and estate-type properties to more units on smaller pieces of ground, more condos, more townhomes, more twin homes than was previously planned. Previously, it was vested to just be large estate-type lots, and so the concept is that those will be more obtainable because of the nature of what they'll be.
The numbers would tend to be the smaller lots from your estimation.
That's what the proposal's been, but again, we haven't allowed them to specifically plan any of the specific villages that aren't yet put into existence.
Question, Tad.
Absolutely.
So I understand that we'd be approving the 2,334 residential. So if they came at a later date with the hospitality district and said, hey, we're picturing 1,000, units, but a council at that time could say, 1,000's really not gonna work, we're thinking more like 500. And so we would negotiate the numbers of their hospitality district at that time, right?
Absolutely, and I think you could do the example you presented, or you could say, look, we don't have a problem with 1,000, but it feels like 500 of those are planned to just be private residential, so we can approve you, but we're gonna subtract those 500 from your
Right.
allocation, right? And so yes, the council will have that opportunity when those applications actually come. Staff will classify it and present a classification pursuant to staff's opinion, but yeah, the council will have that opportunity to interact with the applicant.
Based on the language, it says right here excluding, or it says, this allocation does not apply for the hospitality village.
The per acre residential density, so that's just referring to the five units per acre.
So, I mean, it's kind of like we are recognizing that there's a hospitality village, but that number and the way that looks is to be determined.
Yes, so the challenge of what we're trying to do is the hospitality village does not exist in the site plan today. It's never been given approval, so it doesn't exist. This is trying to suggest a new village in the site plan. That's why we're asking the council to consider a site plan amendment, which would put this one and other details into existence. So the language that Councilman Coates referenced is in section 5, it talks about the 5 units per acre. What that is saying is that 5 units per acre density allocation is not required in the hospitality village. They can be more dense than that. And what we don't know is what it's gonna look like. If it's 5 hotels, the hotels are gonna have their rooms and they're gonna have to meet our commercial code and our commercial standards for 5 hotels.
Clarification purposes, so tonight, are we being asked to vote on this as is?
So it's presented,
It's noticed up as consideration of, not consideration to approve.
I would say those are the same meanings. If the council wants to vote on this tonight, everything's been satisfied so that you can vote on this tonight.
Yeah, there's no way I'd vote for it until I have an idea of the hospitality component. I mean, they're going from 1,884 residential units to 2,334 plus, right? I
Yep.
just want to know what the heck
That's what's
I'm voting
presented.
on, so, okay.
Yeah, that's what's presented. Section 9, parking reduction, they would come in and ask staff to consider a shared parking calculation. That's something that our code currently allows. It does require some calculations and math by our planning folks, but that's put in there as something they can apply for. Section 10, the important part here was really to talk about the pools of the hotel condos and HOAs. You'll see in the blue, in an effort to reduce consumption of city's water resources and to manage the perception of wasteful water practices, developers shall propose pool applications that are reasonably sized for the associated use, together with site plans that locate the pools in a manner that presents visual separation between lakes and permitted pools and creates viewscapes that emphasize architecture, landscaping, and designs. The concept there is we allow condo or HOAs, hotels, condos to have pools right now with culinary water. These ones would be allowed to have it if they brought those uses, but we're asking them to take an additional burden and design their sites so that it doesn't appear that they're just putting, a hotel pool right next to the wave pool, for example. So that just to manage the perception of water use. That's what this is asking. Or I should say, that's what they've agreed to do in this document.
I know we've moved on to pools, just back onto the number of units. In recent conversation, with that 2,334 units, has that changed? Has that increased or decreased, or is that consistent with what the recent conversations have been over the last few months?
I don't know what you mean by recent conversations.
So this came through for
The history is the documentation of acquisition said that they were receiving transfer density of 1,884 units. The city agreed to that process and agreed to that number, and so the city acknowledged that there were 1,884 units that the prior owner hadn't built, that the new owner could build. So this is attempting to increase that number. I've heard numbers from the applicant and from others higher than this, but the agreement from the mediation is
Let me
2,334.
be a little more clear then. The recent land use application, what were the number of residential units in that recent application? Do you remember, Drew?
I don't remember.
And is this, it seems like that's pretty close to what was already presented. I know
believe it
Councilman
is.
Casperson was looking at those numbers.
I believe it is. This is, I think, a 400 and something increase from the 1884.
That's a 450 increase, but
Yeah.
and I recognize that 1884 was the original approval, but we recently had a land use application that did increase residential units, and I'm trying to remember if this is consistent with that.
It's consistent in that there's always been a request or
Is it the same?
a request to increase the residential density.
So it sounds like this is the same as what the last land use application was. Okay.
Section 11 grading permits, they wanted to include some language that says they can go get started with mass grading. Again, this is something that applicants are allowed to do. They just have to submit the permit and post the bond. And so not a lot of concern there. Risks, this is probably duplicative of stuff I've already wrote, but I just wanted to make sure the council's concerns here were written in the document. Developer acknowledges and accepts the inherent risks associated with the planned treatment of developers' groundwater sources, which risks include variability of supply and quality, insufficient availability, and full compliance with applicable regulatory requirements. Except for the city's obligations set forth in the development agreement, developer hereby confirms that the city does not owe any duty or obligation, nor has made any future promise to alleviate, resolve, or remedy any risks associated with the developer's plan to rely on developers' private secondary water sources. Just more language that continues to give the city council hopefully comfort that they aren't committing any of the city's water to the concept that this developer is asking for approval on. Section 12A is something that we've also offered to other developers. What it's saying is if they were to receive denials on future applications, whether it be zone changes or PIDs, the city agrees that they don't lose any of their current vested rights. In other words, they can revert back to what was vested before they made that application. We're willing to do that for other developers. We're willing to do it for them.
May I ask a question, Mayor?
Councilman.
Hey Thad, on the hospitality, is there an acreage assigned to that right now? So many acres of hospitality?
If there is, I don't know it offhand.
So my next
I'm
question
sure there is. I'm sure Brandy would be able to rattle that off quickly.
okay, is
Let's
there?
go up to the paragraph
Yeah,
here.
let's
So
take a look at that.
hospitality,
46,
46, is that in the site plan?
46.1, it's in the, further down.
Yeah.
So what, if the hospitality is kind of a new addition, where, where was that 46 acres before? Was it assigned to commercial in the old development, or where?
That's a good question.
It's just,
There was a lot of open space, and so this proposal's using more of the open space. There was a lot of residential. This proposal's increasing commercial, and so there wasn't a lot of commercial space at the time. Brandy, who's drawn all the site plans, will be able to answer your question specifically.
okay, I mean, I'm just kind of curious if, I can understand where these councilmen are coming from. I mean, we're asking for a increase in density. I think that's, I don't have a problem with that. But then if you add the additional density of a bunch of vacation rentals, a hotel and all that kind of stuff, which is okay, but I think it might give the council a little bit of comfort, maybe to get an idea of what,
So if you look at this site plan and the chart on the left, it gives you the acreages associated with those. So Village 28 says 46.1 acres. And I didn't need any glasses to read that either.
You're lucky.
Well, I've got this really close to my face is my secret. So that's your answer, 46.1 acres. And you'll see in Village 28 there where it's located on the proposed site plan. So maybe let me just present this. This one took me a little minute because it's oriented differently than the existing site plan. In the existing site plan, Fields Road runs north and south, top to bottom on the document. On this one, that's Fields Road that you see going east to west or left to right. So Village 28, you'll see is in this, that looks like Pine View Maroon is what I think that looks like, but the color is similar to that. That's Village 28. That is a village that does not exist, has not been defined in the current vesting. So if approved, this site plan would bring that concept into existence on the very rough terms that have been defined in the agreement tonight. You'll see there, over here on the bottom left, the green regional ball fields, that would be the 10-acre ball field parcel. And then just above that is a fire space, that would be the fire parcel. So those are the locations they're proposing the city's future land be located.
so it basically just comes from some reduced open space, maybe some reduced residential space,
Correct.
some of the park acreage that we got rid of.
I think the
all
best
that stuff.
explanation is probably, about half of it's open space that's no longer gonna be open space, maybe not quite half. A lot of it's residential, that's now gonna be hospitality residential essentially. I think the concept is hospitality type residential, commercial residential.
Getting a much more modern look at it, if we were to approve a PCD today, we would do it with a lot more density than early 2000s. Big lots, lots of grass, it's just a totally different concept too. I mean, you can kind of see by the plan in this, what the density looks like. and it doesn't look overly scary to staff. It's just a more modern use. That's what we're doing to help affordability. It's what we're doing to try to help with water conservation. That's what we'll see more of as we go forward.
So you'll see here this road, Red Slopes Parkway, that's on the far right. That's a road that is not defined in our current site plan, right? So that's a new road. That's part of why we wrote the ball field dedication the way it is written, is we don't know when they're gonna get out to that point. Now, the way I wrote it, if they wanna build Village 28, they've gotta give us the ball field pretty quickly. And what I understand is they're planning to do that. So I think we'll get the ball fields pretty quickly. The way I wrote it, it would be required if they wanna do Village 28, right? And so.
It's in our master plan though, that road.
Sorry?
That's in our master plan. that road.
Red Slopes Parkway is, to connect to the St. George roads, right? Yeah, it's not called Red Slopes Parkway. I don't think it runs in that route. I do remember a road in the other one that eventually leaves the city at that location. Some of the terms we mentioned earlier, so they would be, if you look at the ball field section there, they would have to build that whole Red Slopes Parkway road, but they wouldn't build the additional asphalt curb gutter sidewalk along the regional ball fields. The city would take that burden. The city would also take the burden of building the ball fields. But the city would get fee ownership of that land. Any questions on the site plan? Do any of you want to see the old site plan so you can just compare it against it? Because I was prepared to do that for you.
Can you show them side by side?
Oh, boy, that's like
You have the
Drew-
technology?
That's Drew level aptitude.
He
So
can
this
make you
is,
a graph with his pen.
this is the old site plan. Let me give you some zoomage here. So you'll see, I'm trying to remember, so this is where Village 28 is, Councilman Henderson. So some of these green were residential, the yellow was commercial, so you'll see that. It's Village 28 as we see it today is down in this area. And so it's kind of comprised of these old designations. Some of it's also water. The hashing on that one is the flight plans. There's some airport word for it that relates to just the flight path area. There is some regulations as to what can be built there. Mainly the regulation is a fairly high, building height that we wouldn't allow anyway, so we don't anticipate that. We are trying to not have any reservoirs or lakes in there that might cause waterfowl to fly around in there if we can avoid it. I've not seen any geese fly where they're told to fly, so, we'll do what we can to regulate geese, but we're trying to just not have too many ponds within that. And so that's the currently.
You
vested
used
as of
to
today.
regulate quail and pheasants pretty good, not far from there.
Yeah, old Boomer MacArthur, he regulated the geese.
Okay.
But nobody's doing that today because it's not allowed in the fields. You want me to toggle between the two? Drew, are you able to follow them up side by side? Probably not. Want me to rotate it for you, Jeremy? Yeah.
So if you could rotate and bring them side by side.
Harmonize the colors. This one kind of feels older than 2006. This one almost feels 96 to me with its colors and stuff, and so, but that's what it is. That's what is currently vested today in the current zoning of the Stuckey Farms PCD. Any other questions for me? All right.
Thank you, Thad. Really appreciate your work on that. Councilman Coates.
I want to appreciate that. I know he's worked hard on this, so appreciate your work. And
So council, some of the things that I took away in just my notes, and then this might just be some basis for further discussion and action. Obviously, they're looking to change the name to Alea, modify the preliminary site plan. One of the things that I appreciated was the reduction in surface water from 25.4 acres to 18.7. I appreciated the the clarity and the definitions and really kind of the 6.7 acres versus, and the 12 acres that you pointed out, Councilman Coates. I appreciated the no culinary water used for lakes. I thought that was really clear. I thought it was clear that the developers' private secondary water sources would be used for some of those amenities. I thought they addressed the questions that we've had before about their 31 watersheds of the canal company and a secondary water system that is forthcoming. I thought they were clear with the 10-acre public park and identified where that's going to be. I thought they were clear with the 2-acre fire department, fire station site. I think the hospitality, mixed use, et cetera, I think those are defined. I'm not a voter, but I don't have a problem with the increase in residential density, given the environment with supply and demand. I think this was a really good process with our legal team and the applicant's legal team. But as Thad's presentation and just a few of my remarks, I'll just leave it to you, council, for further discussion and action on this item.
Appreciate your comments, Mayor. I kind of have like comments. I think one comment that was made tonight that really just resonates with me is that the approved plan was from the mid-2000s, 2006, I believe. And today we're, 2025, and things have changed. And I think that it shows good leadership to allow this development to change with the times. I don't think it's just about increased revenue to this developers. I think that these units that they're proposing are the ones that is going to be closer to meeting the affordable guidelines. Whether they are there or not, I don't know. But, I think that I think that the presentation was great tonight, Thad. You do a good job just putting it out and let's decide. So, Mayor, when you're ready, I'm ready to make a motion.
Is there further discussion on this? Councilman Henderson, I see your light go on there.
Sure, thanks. Is it possible for the applicant to maybe give us a little bit of an idea of what they have, the hospitality?
Applicants, attorneys are here, as well as their consultant, Brandy, and also their principals. Maybe
Okay,
we call
I'd
it
be happy
Brandy.
to invite Brandy or whoever the applicant would like to come forward. We know you, but state your name for the record, and would you answer the councilman's question?
Absolutely. Good evening, Council. Brandy Walker with Civil Science. Sorry, I have the loudest voice, Drew, representing the applicant tonight. In discussions, because thank you, Thad, for all your efforts in your presentation tonight. Based off hotel keys of what's really preliminary at this point, hotel, motel, condo, all things hospitality related, if you were to put a density to it, right now we're looking to be no more than 10 units per acre.
So about under 500, if I'm doing the math quick.
Yes. So in asking where stuff came from and went to, we envisioned the hospitality area, if commercial. But with the city's current commercial zones, with hotels being under this C1, C2, C3, thus the creation of hospitality. So it blends with all the uses that we kind of want to do without putting it to a specific zone chart.
So the two hotels up at Green Springs, the Spring Hill and the Residence Inn, there's what, 270 doors in 6 acres. This is 48 acres.
46.1.
That's what I said, 46.1.
Yeah. You got me earlier, though. Yeah.
I mean, I'd still rather, to me, I think it's premature to vote on it until there's a number put to it and in a conversation or discussion on it, along with some of the other questions that we had in going through this process. I'm not ready to vote for it. I'm not ready to vote for or against it. I'd table it for a couple of weeks while we have a conversation and come back and fix some of the questions that we had as we're going through this process. Right? I mean, we've been talking for a little over an hour, and there was a lot of questions that myself and some of the other council members had. I'm just not ready to vote for it.
Thank you, Brandy. Councilman Henderson, everything you have?
Yeah, I think so.
Council, I'm happy to facilitate further discussion and or motion at your pleasure.
I really like that where Thad has, specifically stated that the city is under no obligation to provide, water, will not be using culinary water. But I also, where the developer has, anyone can bring forth a PID. They're entitled to do that, but I just don't see the purpose of having the PID language. I'm just wondering if
I can try to explain it a little
can
better.
remove that.
The applicant wanted it in there. I told them that it gets them nothing, it doesn't get them. And so it would be the same thing to say they could apply for a zone change next month. That's already policy of the city's code and the city's policies. So you're not giving them anything. They wanted the council to hear and see for discussion on a future decision about a PID.
Yeah, and I think it's good to show that they want to do that, but then I don't see why it needs to necessarily stay. I feel like it could be removed.
I think their attorney and your attorney agree that it can be removed. Been informed by it being there, and you'll probably see a future application along those lines. Yeah, language of the PID does not guarantee.
Is there further discussion on this particular item? If not, I'm happy to entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we table this item. The considered of modification site plan and site plan agreement addendum for the Stuckey Farms PCD for the reasons we need clarification on Village 28. The additional items we talked about in the water source, just a couple clerical errors that we talked about, the future development in item under section 2, section C of future technologies for the treatment. And I think the PID should be reworded or removed from the document.
Council, you've heard the motion to table for the reasons listed. 2 weeks would be April 9th.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Coates, a second by Councilman Belliston. We'll go with a roll call vote to table on this particular item for 2 weeks, starting with Council Member Belliston. Henderson.
Aye.
Coates. Ivy. Aye. Casperson. That item is tabled until April 9th for the purpose of clarifying and tightening up a few of the particular points that were brought up in the discussion tonight. Moving on to the next session. This is item 9, report of officers from assigned committee. We'll start with Councilman Belliston.
I'll go first, Mayor, if I need to.
Why don't we start with Councilman Coates, and I'm going to ask him how the landfill is doing.
Piling up.
All right, pay up, Councilman Henderson.
He said he'd pay me $1 if I said it. No, I don't want you.
That was all staged from a publicly noticed site visit to the landfill, and Councilman Coates is doing wonderful out there chairing that board, and it's a beautiful new facility. If you have a reason to take some spring cleaning out there and take a look, I highly advise that.
And I'd recommend you wait another month. We're in the final stages of cleaning up and getting it done. We want to do a lot of test runs on the building and get it going before we just open it up to the general public. But it is a nice facility. The facility is intended for future growth of the landfill, and that it has room to grow as a staff, and it's just nice to have the amenity. That old scale house and building is definitely run down, and it's run its life course. We are going to remove the current scale house as soon as we get the new scale house open. So there'll be a little temporary around that, because that'll be where the main access is.
Are you going to do ribbon cutting?
Yes, we are going to do a ribbon cutting. I have a date, but I set a date, but I forgot the date.
So
But
I'm
the
just
staff
thinking,
out there knows it.
if there are any members of the media around, that might be a great story. The facility really is impressive, and
And I would
it is
love-
built for the use of the community.
And I'd love to get that date once we get that solidified. I don't want to give the media that yet, but I appreciate that, Mayor. And a nice facility. Like I said, we built it for future growth. It's going to be nice. And I think the public's really going to enjoy dropping off their trash there. Hopefully they don't trash the new site.
Anything else?
No, nothing else to report tonight.
We'll circle back to $1 poorer Councilman Henderson.
Mayor, I don't have anything today, but I really enjoyed going through the new facilities out at the landfill. I mean, that was really nice, and Councilman Coates has done a really good job
Yeah.
pushing that through, and like you mentioned today, Mayor, there's a lot of foresight involved. I mean, that building's gonna be good for 60 years, you know, to grow into it, and anyway, well done.
Thank you. Councilman Ivy.
It was a really interesting tour. Councilman Coates does do a great job as the chair there at the Solid Waste District, but I learned something while I was there, and that is that as a resident, you can take out 2,000 pounds a year free of charge for your own cleanup, and that's a month.
1,000, right?
It's 1,000 ton, which is 2,000 pounds. A month you can take out there.
Better. I don't have that much garbage, but yeah, that's.
So that's good to know. The residents don't know that part of your fee that you pay for your standard pickup includes that. So you can go out to the dump and drop off stuff. Of course, that doesn't include any like special chemicals, but throughout every quarter or every half year, they have special chemical day that you can go drop off your oils and those kind of things out there as well.
You can also call for a big bulky item pickup like a refrigerator, freezer, and they'll pick those up curbside. And yeah, some good services there that if you're paying the bill, you should know what you're getting out of it. Mayor, what I'd like to talk about tonight briefly is several years ago, we talked about, and it's been a long time, we talked about Senator Lee's houses plan, where he had cutting edge idea that we could utilize federal land to build affordable housing on. And during an administration change in the White House, there wasn't a lot of movement on this for years and years. And now, all of a sudden, this bill has really caught traction. And I reached out to Anthony in Senator Lee's office and had a really good conversation with him. And it's not only caught traction, it's actually seeing some movement. And sometime later this year, they will be bringing that forward. But what it is, and I have a map here, but I won't show it. Just suffice it to say that Washington has a lot of state and federal land around Washington in strategic areas that would benefit affordable housing. This bill wouldn't really benefit city or counties, states back east because it is more of a rural type application, but it would directly benefit Utah, Arizona, California, and Nevada for affordable housing. So this is something that we've been working on. We're going to keep an eye on it and offer help as we can, but really what it would be is we'd actually, as residents, citizens of the United States, we could apply and utilize federal land to build houses on. You know, if you take the price of the land out of a house, then all of a sudden it can become affordable. But until you do that, it's really a struggle for a lot of folks across the spectrum. You used to say young marrieds or retireds. It's really everyone nowadays that falls into that. But I would just mention that, Mayor, we're excited about this. There's two articles.
Councilman Ivy, I don't want to interrupt you, but I think to your point, it looks like on this map that IT's putting up, look at the amount of encumbered land in the West. Yeah. I mean, you think there's vast swaths of ground available for development, and so much of it is controlled by various levels of government. So to free some of that up just helps with that supply and demand, helps those next generations have a chance to own ground.
It does, Mayor. This is a Wall Street Journal ad that's interactive and it'll answer specific questions. And then there was an article that came out in, I believe, the Deseret News that our governor held the possibilities for the Houses Act. And, you know, this is something that we've struggled with between water and affordable housing. kind of dominates a lot of our time because there's both important issues. But if we could, Steve, if you could send this link to the council members, they could probably peruse it at their leisure. I think it's worth your time to read it and it's really a great thing that I hope will come to fruition. We've been waiting a long time, and there's no better time than now to get this passed into law so that we can utilize the Affordable Housing Act for our residents here, county, state, and really across our nation.
Well, I know you've been working on this for a long time, Councilman. This is good stuff. It's as grassroots as it gets, and hopefully we'll free up some land for future generations to be able to have that American dream of home ownership. Anything else?
No, thank you.
Councilwoman Casperson.
We had an active transportation committee meeting, and I asked Paul if he'd mind showing the progress that's been made on the canal trail. I think it's cool to see the map and to see, what is going in, and Paul does an awesome job. So I thought, what better person to show that progress?
I can make it really quick for you, but this is kind of the map, top to bottom, the canal trail that we've been working on. A lot of properties involved. We've acquired a lot of easements.
Sign one more.
Perfect. We're getting close. There's a handful we need left, and then we're hopefully going to be able to put some pavement down the next few months. So some of these sections we've had really good response, and we're just really moving along. All the green ones are cleared. We either have the easements or everything we need, and so there's a couple sections that we're working on that we're hoping to pave here pretty quick. So it's really, really exciting project to have it moving and progressing so much.
Paul? So if you could zoom into, so from Washington, let's see here. See that green triangular piece right there through Indian?
With the number 2?
Maybe. Yeah. So what I'm looking at is how soon are we going to be able to pave from? Because it already comes right to here. This is
Correct,
paved,
yeah.
Because I ran that this morning. How soon will this section be paved? I'm not sure. I can't remember the name of this road.
So Mayor, the plan is there's another easement we still are working to acquire.
Right there.
One easement, and then the plan is to pave all the way to 108.
Just one easement for all that way?
We've got all,
We're
the green is all
waiting
the
on one
easements that
more
are
easement.
obtained. It's the yellow that we.
The yellow lot 102 is not received yet.
Working through that one, right?
Yeah.
That's
And
really
since we get that
exciting.
one, we'll have a really good connection there. We've got a trail counter in where that 2 is, and we have some paved there, so we're really excited.
And I know it's a
Keep
team
making more
effort on
progress.
that 102 piece, so that's exciting. What other sections do you anticipate being kind of on the short list to pave?
So we've got south of Silver Falls. We're getting a whole bunch there. See kind of this section, we've got a lot in there. So we're hoping, we've got a couple more to get, but we're really hoping we can make some progress in here and have another section here to pave. Just a handful of
Like from
homeowners.
Lost Ridge to Silver Falls?
Yeah. And then further south, some of this will come with development. These sections through here, we've got what we need. Once the development comes through, we'll be able to connect it to our existing trails.
85 and 86, those will come with the developments that we've already approved, but they're not built yet. And then 87 will come in through the development. You'll be connected to Treasure Valley.
Yeah, south of 100 is where the trail ends right now. And as soon as 87 goes through and we have a place to connect the trail to, that section will go through as well.
What will it look like when you go across, that busy road there? Will you
So
have,
it will come out and cross at the light on the corner.
oh, okay.
The trail won't continue to follow the canal through the middle of the block. They'll come out and we'll cross at the corner of 86 and 87 there.
Councilwoman Casper, I don't know if you remember when that 86 commercial development came in, they had the trail along that side of Washington Fields Road. So it runs along the road right
Oh,
there.
yeah, okay.
When it leaves, you can see up higher, the green area that's in front of that development. That trail's already done. It'll cross the road on I'm just gonna point.
Cross the road, run down this west side of Fields Road. Come across the south side of George Washington, and then run along the canal. Which is the actual canal.
Where does it cross to the west side of Washington Fields Road?
It'll be up by 3090 is the road, north by the school.
Majestic View.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it'll
that-
cross
that
at the light
intersection.
at the school, and then it continues behind the school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No?
Crossing mid-block. One trail.
The problem is the safety with how busy those roads are. We want to put people toward the intersections where there's signaled lights.
Yeah, you see where that crosses the road?
Because we don't want it to cross mid-block.
There's not a light there. That's a mid-block, just people running across.
It's just dangerous. Get them to the intersection.
That happens on the northern.
It's fine. I remember there was a lot of discussion when we were working on this, that what's the best route, and with the way that commercial development came, just the mid-block with those two busy roads, we just felt would be too dangerous for children or anyone. We want to get them to a signal that's safe.
This will applies on both locations where I would cross there. Are not signalized or intersections that would, take a safer road crossing.
And Paul, do you want to give an update too to the number, with the counters? I can't remember the date that you started counting for the number, for the usage.
Yeah, we put the trail counters in the end of September. We had our last active transportation meeting 2 months ago, and we had about 80,000 people on the trails. This time when we had our meeting, we've had 150,000 people on the trails. Our busiest day last calendar year was about 1,000 people a day. Springtime, this is the best time. We're averaging over 1,000 people a day this time of year. So I think we've had 1,300 people consistently the last few days on our trail system.
So that means they're outside, staying healthy and not,
Yep, they're outside enjoying the weather, being active.
it's the best place for us, isn't it?
So Paul,
Jeremy just said this was my best report that I've ever given, so maybe I'll invite you up every time.
Actually said she cheated. Been a ringer.
I have to watch those two on the end,
Yeah.
So Paul, I think it'd be great when we get the data, like in a year, to kind of see the graph of, what's our peak, we know our peak season, spring and fall, but I'm just curious to see what those numbers are on those trails. And I love that we're tracking it, because we can use that data to help with us with grants and those kind of things, saying, hey, our community's super active, these are beneficial to our community.
Yeah, it's been really helpful to have that information. We'd love to do that.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Anybody else who'd like to call up? Councilwoman Casperson? I'm teasing.
Chief, would you like to come up?
Thank you. And then I just briefly on mine, I'd just like to thank Blake and Andy and John. I know they've been doing a lot of work on that right turn lane on 300 East going north, turning right onto Telegraph. It looks really good. You guys did a nice job there, and I like the way that you kind of landscaped it and built that wall in there. It was exactly what I think we envisioned would be good. So appreciate all your work there. Next item on the agenda is city manager report.
Thank you,
Jeremy.
Mayor. In recognition of all of our residents who stayed through this exciting meeting and are still here to hear my report, I have 3 items to update them on. The right turn pocket project on 300 East and Telegraph is completed. It
That's
looks
already
really
been covered.
nice.
Did you not? It was just covered. Just cut it down to 2.
Look, I get to cover it again if I want to cover it again, don't I? I think it's in my contract. I think adding those walls turned out really nice, turned out a lot better than I thought for noise cancellation and privacy for those residents. So that hadn't been covered yet. Did we talk about the old fire station being demolished? Was I?
Oh,
was
that's good. Go,
Councilwoman-
go ahead.
Was Councilwoman Casperson bothering me so I couldn't hear?
Yeah,
other
you were a little
people's reports?
distracted, but
Did you see her bothering it?
So the old fire station has been demolished and removed. I think everybody recognizes it. It looks pretty different. It opens up the front of our city office or the back of our city office. The paving of the parking lot's underway. We don't have an exact date because the city crews are moving it along as they have time to complete the work, but it's looking really nice. Also, if you go down 2000 South where we just paved as part of that sewer project, you'll notice the road is already starting to break up in that area. So we recognize we're having some problems with the pavement. We're exercising the contractor's warranty to fix that issue. So we have cones back up and we're working on that. But that is my report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Next item is closed session. We do have need to go to closed session for pending or potential litigation. I'll call for a motion for that.
So made.
Motion by Councilman Belliston, second by Councilman Ivy. All in favor?
Aye.
That is approved unanimously, 5-0. We will move into closed session. Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.